Hey guys, welcome to Green Bean Fiction. So in today's video we are gonna see, what if Deku became Vigilante and had Harem? Part 1. This story is a different way by Thicky67. Before starting, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe the channel if you are new so you won't miss our latest videos. Narrator Pav. The courtroom was in stunned silence at All Might's declarations, as the giant skeleton cuffed himself into the chair next to Izuku. Izuku stared at him in shock before giving him a thankful smile, which Toshinori returned his own smile. The judge cleared their throat and strikes their gavel to stop the whispering in the courtroom. Mr. All Might, I'm sorry to say this. You can't sit there as you are not an attorney nor are you the one on trial, clarified the judge as they adjusted their glasses with nervousness and confusion on the situation. Why not? I already said why I belong here and I'll say it again. I'm the reason why he's going to jail or might go to jail. I trained him, and gave him his suit and equipment, all of it was my idea. If my successor and pupil is going to prison for my mistakes, then I'll gladly go along with him. So, yes, this trial is just as much for me as it is for him, stated Toshi, causing murmurs to break out in the courtroom as no one saw this coming. The judge looked lost, the guards didn't know what to do, and the jury also looked lost. As if something had gone off script. The silence was broken by a loud ringing when the judge pulled out a phone and quickly faced away from the cameras, leaning into the phone. There were hushed whispers between the judge and phone, before closing it as it came to an end. The judge cleared their voice and struck their gavel, regaining order in the courtroom. As of this moment, All Might, also known as Toshinori Yagi, will also be joining Izuku Midoriya as a defendant. This is now a joint trial to determine their innocence. The court will reconvene in 20 minutes. The court exploded in complaints and shouts of protest as Toshinori and Izuku were escorted out in chains by the guards. Toshinori was checked for anything in his clothes but was shown to be clean. They were shoved into a side room showing a dark conference room with a table in the middle horizontal to the door. Sitting at it was an older woman with gelled back blonde hair and deep turquoise eyes that held no positive emotions. She was in a feminine business suit, but Izuku could tell something was dangerous about her, especially since there were heroes all around her, yet he didn't recognize a single one. They were forced down on the two chairs in front of the woman with little resistance. The woman was tapping her foot on the floor with clear anger in her demeanor. Well, good job, Yagi. You managed to ruin my plans and pissed me off. Neither prisoner said anything as they sat there, making her groan as she rubbed her head, most likely a headache. What a pain. Okay, since you basically sabotaged this whole trial, Yagi, we have to do a change of plans. I have a deal for Izuku Midoriya. Izuku narrowed his eyes at the Madam President as he wanted her to continue. She met his glare and actually liked it. That meant this kid still had some grit, good, that will be useful. So here's the deal for you. It comes in two parts or two portions. 1. You will return to UA to finish your studies, however, you will not be allowed to leave there at all unless with supervision. To monitor this, an ankle monitor will be attached to your ankle, to track your position and give an intense shock if you try to leave. Sounds fair, Izuku muttered with sarcasm, but the woman continued, ignoring him. 2. You will do whatever I say, and I mean whatever I say without question. I tell you to run, you run until your legs fall off from the bone. Then you start crawling until I say stop. That will be your life until 3 years after you graduate from UA. I will own your ass, and there's no other way to put it. The second portion of this part is something you can at least enjoy depending on your personality. Toshinori and Izuku weren't liking this deal one bit, but it seemed she wasn't done. I know about your quirk, Midoriya, and everything about it. I also know that it's more compatible with quirkless people, so I think you know where I'm going with this. By the end of your tenure at UA, you must have at least 5 women partners, girlfriend, fiancé, concubines, or wives. It doesn't matter as long as you have 5. You must also have 1 child by the time you graduate. Also, every woman must give their written consent to this harem. These are the conditions of the deal, so do you accept these conditions? Izuku felt disturbed by the deal while Toshinori was fuming with rage. However, both had to admit there wasn't really any other option. Well, it's not like I had any other choice, said Izuku as he offered his hand for a shake, which the woman returned with a smile Izuku couldn't read. Good, at least you understand that, Midoriya. Now for you, Yagi, we'll discuss your punishment at a later date. Take them back. So, the two were lifted up and escorted back to the courtroom so the new rigged trial could commence. The trial lasted 3 hours for Theatrix alone, as Izuku and Toshinori were found not guilty since their deal was kept under the table. Izuku was in the back of a tinted limo with Toshinori and Nezu. Nezu was just apologizing that he couldn't do more, which Izuku just said was fine, and that he was lucky he got off so easy. Nezu told him he was in the 1B dorm on the top floor in a corner room with no balcony, windows, or neighbors. He was to be isolated basically unless he came himself. Also, his classmates wouldn't be back until another week, which he was fine with. It was the next day and Izuku was sitting on the couch in his common room in the dorms hissing as Ochako checked his wounds from his battle with AFO. The prison did the bare minimum to treat him, which was just to hand Izuku the supplies and leave them to him. Luckily, he had the experience to at least prevent himself from dying. However, that didn't mean Ochako was happy, as she was inspecting his wounds and reapplying medicine or bandages. Right now she was wrapping Izuku's torso in bandages to stabilize some broken ribs and other bones. So, basically you need to get more women at your side to please the government, right? Asked Ochako in a calm tone, yet her actions didn't match the tone as she harshly tightened the bandage. Ow, watch it. Yes, that's the arrangements of the deal. I'm sorry, but I really wasn't in a position to argue with the government. It was the only way I could avoid prison time. Ochako's look softened as she realized how much this was bothering Izuku. He refused to look at her and instead was looking at the consent forms these women would have to sign on the coffee table in front of them. Ochako sighed as she knotted the bandage, finishing it. She then interlocked her fingers with his, making him turn towards her. I was just messing with you, Izuku. Really, I could never be mad at you for this. You did what you had to. Izuku sighed. I know, Ochako. It just feels like I betrayed you even though I never wanted to. Izuku tried to look away from her, but she put a hand on his cheek and made him look at her. Do you love me? She asked. Izuku didn't take a second to respond, of course. She smiled at that and leaned back on the couch. Then everything's fine. As long as you love me, Izuku, and I love you. It would never matter how many women would be at your side. As long as I'm one of them. Well, as long as I'm the main woman. Ochako added with blush as she realized she still didn't really like the idea of another girl trying to be the main piece with Izuku. She coughed into her hand and handed Izuku a filled-out consent form, making him shocked. I truly do love you, Izuku. And nothing will change that. No matter how mad I may seem sometimes, I will always love you. Izuku smiled as he tried to hold back tears. God, what would I do without you, Ochako? Probably bleeding in an alleyway or something. They both laughed as they got close and shared a kiss. That turned a little deeper for the seer's comfortability. Narrator Pav. Izuku huffed and panted as he squatted a literal car in UA's gym. It's been 4 days since his trial and freedom. He hadn't been doing much since then besides pushing himself to reach his old peak of 80%. It also didn't help that every time he got close to reaching it again he would get injured and would have to repeat the process all over again. Examples are his muscular fight and then almost immediately after the all-for-one fight. He had regressed considerably due to this, as he now held barely 35% of his full power. The past user's quirks helped him kind of bridge the gap in his power, but he knew he could be way stronger. Izuku tossed the car off his back with a thud as he took a drink of water from a canister before moving to a leg press machine that causally loaded itself up to the same weight as an 18-wheeler. Izuku pulled the zipper down of his UA tracksuit as he began a new set of reps while getting lost in his thoughts again. Speaking of the past users, they had been a great help since his imprisonment. Either giving him encouragement or advice, theories on their quirks. Mainly, Nana, who always talked to him and gave him support, even though he could tell she was hurting due to Shigaraki. She didn't let it bother her and instead tried to act like a mentor for Izuku. He still worried for her though. As Izuku re-racked the weight, the door to the gym opened, making Izuku turn and his heart instantly dropped in fear. Najire had walked in with her hair tied in a high ponytail with her in the UA jumpsuit. Their eyes met immediately with a slightly tense aura around them. Those 3 seconds felt like forever for both of them. Until Najire just smiled and walked over to him, causing Izuku to stand up, forcing her to look up with the smile still on her face. Najire. Hey, Izuku. How was your break? This threw Izuku completely off as he was expecting Najire to start just questioning him like a detective. Yet here she stood acting completely out of character. Acting like he hadn't been gone for almost half a year. That's when it hit Izuku fully on why she wasn't acting like this. She didn't want Izuku to feel pressured after all that happened to him, both the injuries and the trial, so she was treating it like Izuku had barely been gone for a week. Izuku smiled as he responded. Izuku, it could have been better, how have you been? Najire just sighed as she inspected the gym, making sure no one was around. Najire, I could have been better if my gym buddy was around, but besides that it was alright. Izuku just rubbed the back of his head at that comment. Izuku. Yeah, sorry about that, Najire. I know you are Izuku, you never mean to hurt someone on purpose. Now tell me all about your adventures while we work out. Najire beamed brightly as she got on the leg press, ready to push it. Izuku just smiled as he got ready to spot her. So, they talked while they worked out together the same way they had first bonded all those months ago. Izuku truly was grateful for his third-year friend. He also couldn't help but think about the contract he had made every time he looked at Najire's beautiful smile and joyful laughter. However, he quickly killed those thoughts since he presumed Najire wouldn't want to be in that type of arrangement. Soon their workout ended and they both promised each other to meet up for lunch before school started again, which was in 3 days. The next day, Izuku could be seen shirtless in the commons as he had just finished cleaning the dorms, as punishment from Nezu. So, now he was sitting on the couch trying to catch up on the last remaining schoolwork he had missed out on due to prison. As he was writing a wrong answer for a math problem, he heard chatter outside the dorm, making him look outside. He sighed as he saw Class 1B, his class, standing outside with their luggage and Vlad King in front of them explaining the rules of the dorm and the layout. Izuku sighed as he definitely wasn't in the mood to deal with people he didn't get along with that much. He put on a white short-sleeve shirt and then sat back down to do his work. He could only hear tidbits of the conversations outside as Vlad King answered questions. Until one question caught on Izuku's ear. Is Midoriya here? Vlad King. Yes. Now let's head inside. The door opened, revealing all of Class 1B being led by Vlad King. It was awkward as Izuku met eyes with them while sitting on the couch and them just staring at him, obviously uncomfortable. Izuku sighed as he remembered what Nezu told him to say to them as a part of his punishment. He stood up and went to the main hall and bowed down, making everyone confused about why he did that. Izuku. I'm sorry for bringing unwanted negative attention to this class. Thanks to my foolish actions. Class B looked shocked by this, and before anyone could say anything, Izuku had already stood back up and was starting to walk away to his room. However, before he could make it even 3 steps, Kendo rushed forward and quickly grabbed his wrist, stopping him. He turned back with a confused look as Kendo had an embarrassed look before finally speaking. Kendo. Thank you for saving me. Kendo quickly let go of his arm and bowed, making Izuku's eyes widen in shock as his mouth gaped as well. Soon the rest of the class followed their president's lead, muttering thanks to Izuku as they bowed. Izuku immediately panicked and flushed in embarrassment as he waved his arms back and forth. Izuku. What are you guys doing? I don't deserve all that. I'm a criminal. Kendo. A criminal wouldn't go out of their way to save people, putting their own life at risk, but literally, and Firefly is the complete opposite of what a criminal would do. Setsuna. Exactly. How could we ever hate someone that would do all that? Who cares about some dumb laws? Tetsu. Yeah, you were so manly during your fights. Kendo. Midoriya. We're sorry for casting you out all those months ago. We never meant to do it, but still, we know it was wrong, and all just because of silly rivalry. However, we have always considered you as our classmate even now, and nothing will change that. The rest of the class quickly voiced their agreement, making Izuku almost cry until he held it back and just smiled thankfully at the class. Vlad King watched from the side with a smile as he left the dorm. He could explain the appliances of it later. Izuku offered his hand to Kendo. Izuku. Well, I'd be glad to forget about the past and start again. How about friends? Kendo smiled and gladly accepted Izuku's hand in a shake. Kendo. Friends. Soon the whole class surrounded Izuku, asking him a million questions. Yet Izuku didn't feel overwhelmed. Instead he smiled and laughed as he guided them to the couches and started telling his stories from his vigilante times. Kendo stood in the pathway for a second, just staring at Izuku's scar-ridden arms, just feeling a little sad for some reason before joining the rest of her class in the common area. The next day began with Izuku slowly adjusting back to school, with him trying his hardest to ignore the stares in the hallway. Luckily, he had finished all his past coursework, meaning he was technically caught up to his work. However, in the actual lecture parts, he was completely lost, making Monoma promise Izuku he'll help him study, which the ex-vigilante was thankful for. Soon, lunchtime arrived, and as soon Izuku entered the cafeteria, the room went dead silent as everyone stared at him, making him slightly uncomfortable. He saw Ochako at their old table waving him over, making him smile as he walked over. He was also thankful to Kendo, who told everyone to mind their own business, quickly causing everyone to turn away from Izuku. Izuku gave her a thankful smile, which she returned with a giant thumbs up. However, not even a few seconds into the two eating lunch, Momo walked up to them, making tension grow. Izuku stared at her with a hard look that held nothing behind it, while Ochako didn't even meet her gaze as she continued to eat. Izuku. What do you need, Yaoyorozu? Momo. Izuku. Why didn't you tell me? I thought we were friends. Izuku ignored the accusing tone as he replied with a cold remark. Izuku. Why would I? It was a secret for a reason. Momo seemed hurt by that answer before regaining her confidence and continued. Momo. I thought we had something. That pushed a button of Izuku's as he slammed his fork down with a bang, making Momo flinch a little and causing some of the other patrons to turn toward the drama. Ochako continued to look down at her food, picking at it, wanting to stay out of this. Izuku. My own mother didn't learn the truth until I was on my deathbed. Ochako only found out because of chance. I planned to not tell a single soul until the day I died, but that didn't happen. I didn't owe you anything, Yaoyorozu, especially after I learned how you treated Ochako while I was gone. Yet, you still have the audacity to act like you were someone that deserved to know. Momo. I only treated her like that because she wouldn't tell me the truth. Izuku. She didn't tell you the truth because she respected my wishes enough to not tell a soul. You ignored that completely to catch up in your spoiled rich kid mind, where you just believe everyone owes you what you expect. Leave. Momo stood there for a second, wanting to argue against the accusation, until she just turned around and left the cafeteria. Izuku sighed as he rubbed his forehead. He was sad losing Momo as a friend, but she couldn't treat the person he loved like that and expect him to not be angry like that. Ochako coughed, getting Izuku's attention and showing his tired eyes. Ochako. You could have been a little nicer. Izuku. Then she wouldn't have gotten the hint that I'm not in the mood. Also, I thought you'd be happy with that considering she attacked you. Ochako. She was confused and worried at the time, Izuku. I can't blame her for wanting to know what happened to probably her first true friend. You should try to at least explain yourself a little better, and get to understand her side. Izuku. I'm not hearing anything from her until she apologizes to you, Ochako. Once she does, then I'll think about giving her the time of day. Ochako. Okay, you really are too good for me, said Ochako as she chuckled while staring lovingly at Izuku, who returned the look. Izuku. I say the same thing about you all the time. Later, Izuku arrived at the support lab to visit his favorite mechanic. For the past 2 weeks, yes, even during his trial, May had been hounding his phone with messages about the ideas she was blossoming with now due to her knowing the truth. This morning she had basically begged him, 50 messages and 20 phone calls, to come to visit her in the support lab to receive a gift. He walked into the support lab seeing the many students casually working on God knows what. However, he spotted the pink dreadlocks from a mile away casually welding something onto what looked to be a mech suit. He tapped her shoulder with a black tendril to get her attention. He didn't want to get too close since she had a blowtorch. She stopped and turned around, pulling up her blast mask, showing an annoyed face due to the interruption. Until she realized it was Izuku and tossed the mask and blowtorch to the side, running full speed towards Izuku. May. Izuku. May snagged Izuku into hug, making Izuku oof as she tightly squeezed, putting her face into his chest and even snuggling into him. Izuku gray-red in the face as he felt 2 tanks press into him. He quickly regained himself as he lightly tapped her shoulder. Izuku. Mei. Mei quickly returned to reality and jumped back, putting 5 feet between them with her face red like a tomato. Izuku was kind enough to pretend this didn't happen for Mei's. Izuku. So, you said you had something to want to give me. Mei. Cough. Yeah, follow me. God, I'm such a spaz. Mei lead him to the back where her personal workbench, which Izuku noticed instantly before she even arrived. Because it had a small fire in the corner of it and that it looked like a complete disaster. She ignored the mess and just slapped the fire with a towel and started scavenging through the cabinets of her workbench. Carelessly tossing things to the side, making Izuku sweat drop, yet also look away in respect, as Mei seemed to have none for her own body as she casually swayed back and forth in front of Izuku. She let out a small cheer, muffled since she was inside the cupboards, and pulled out a briefcase with the title of Alpha. She slammed the briefcase on her bench, causing another fire to break out somehow, which she just shooed away. Mei. Now feast your eyes on this baby. Mei clicked the case opening, revealing Izuku's vigilante costume repaired. Izuku's mouth gapped in shock as he walked closer and slowly inspected the costume. The long-sleeve shirt he wore before was now a dark forest green with a more elastic type of material similar to a real hero costume, yet it still held its formal type of look. His vest was now black with the same sturdy material, along with the gloves which he recognized as the ones Mei had used to impress him all that time ago. The straps he used to have wrapped around him were now a bright red, and his shoes as well in a matching red. His hood was now attached to his shirt and seemed to be able to fold into the costume in case he didn't want it. Mei. Now Izuku the hero and the Good Samaritan can be one and the same. I added some tweaks in my inventions to it, but it's still your suit, a suit that takes the best of both worlds, you. Izuku was quiet for a second as he just stared at the costume before turning and wrapping Mei into a hug. She grew red and shocked for a second before smiling and returning it, wrapping her arms around his waist. They stood there for a second until they slowly separated. They looked into each other's eyes with their arms still wrapped around each other. It felt like nothing was around them, just the two of them. Their faces slowly leaned towards each other while their eyes seemed to slowly close, as they were centimeters apart. Mei's workbench imposed into flames, shocking Izuku and Mei as he instinctively pulled her back due to danger sense. He also grabbed his suitcase from it, to save his new suit. Mei. No, my babies. Izuku. I can. Mei. Nope, get out. Mei kicked Izuku out of the lab as she hurriedly tried to save her workbench with a very evident blush on her face. Mei. Goddammit, Mei. He has a girlfriend. Izuku stood outside of the lab, frozen in place as he stared at the door holding his briefcase. He had a small blush on his face that he desperately tried to kill. He couldn't help but imagine her accepting the contract, but he slapped his face as he started walking towards his dorm. After all, it's not like she would ever join that agreement. Izuku was knocked out of his self-depraving thoughts by his phone ringing. He cursed as he tried to adjust the giant briefcase so he could reach for his phone in his back pocket. He finally fished it out and saw it was Toshinori, which he quickly answered and put it to his ear. Izuku. What's up, master? Is the government still bothering you? Toshi. Not this time, Izuku. I'm seeing him tomorrow. Do you want to come? Izuku froze mid-step and stood there for a second processing the question, then he answered. Izuku. Where do I meet you? Narrator Pav. It was a quiet, cloudy morning as Toshinori and Izuku traveled to Tartarus in the back of a black limousine. They hadn't said a word to each other since they got in the car. Both were mentally preparing themselves to talk with the bane of all heroes soon. Izuku was wondering how it would go while Toshinori was going over what to say in his head. Izuku was in his new costume and Toshinori was in his old All Might costume, but in his lanky form. Soon they arrived at the front entrance of the unescapable prison, getting escorted by an army of guards to their desired location. The tension was palpable in the air as Izuku passed the cells of some of the villains that even he put away while he was a vigilante, all giving glares in the safety of their cells. Soon, the prison captain led them to a vault which he opened with a complicated procedure, revealing a white hallway, then a small left turn leading to the hallway that allowed you to see the chained up all for one who held a sick grin on his lips. The two entered the cell, which looked more like a hospital room with calm expressions, sitting in chairs in front of the chained man. All for One started the conversation with a snarky and sarcastic remark. AFO. Well, if it isn't the two users of that damn quirk. To what do I owe the visit to my humble abode? Toshinori. Shut it. Where's Shigaraki? All for One. AFO. Oh my. Already feeling guilty there, All Might. Isn't it a little late for you to try to mend broken bonds? After all, you are powerless now in both ways that matter. Now your apprentice here looks at Izuku, he may have a chance. Izuku didn't flinch at the vacant stare from All for One, instead just staring back at him with no emotion on his face. This made the villain smile. Even though he didn't have eyes anymore, he could still tell what Izuku was doing. Toshinori growled as he wanted this bastard to stop eyeing Izuku like that. Toshinori. We don't know until we try. AFO. Trust me. I couldn't even control that walking time bomb even if I tried. Now that I'm gone, he's like a stray dog that will bite and snarl at anything that gets too close. All for One never took his eyes off of Izuku as he just looked right at him before something finally seemed to click in the deranged man's head, causing a sadistic smile came to his lips. Izuku and Toshinori instinctively went on guard after seeing that, not sure what All for One was planning until he finally started speaking. AFO. You know, Izuku, you indeed are my greatest creation. You finally convinced me. Izuku. What the hell are you talking about? AFO. Did Inko not teach you any manners, boy? Let's see. Ah yes, July 15, 2408. Blood type. Oh, a measly 5 pounds when you popped out of Inko. She wouldn't stop crying or shut up when you came into my world. Unfortunately, you got almost all those pathetic traits from her, well, minus the crazy hair. The room went cold as Izuku stared at All for One with a silent stare, while a look of disbelief and doubt crossed Toshinori's face, yet hints of doubt seeped into him, evident by the glances he gave Izuku. All for One just smiled as he continued on. AFO. What was the excuse I gave her? I was going abroad due to a financial opportunity that benefited our family. I think she was the 20th woman I told that to. I mean, what was the use of sticking around when I had already taken your useless quirk? What was it again? Oh right, an exact replica of Inko's. I was hoping for more full-blown telekinesis or something similar to mine, but you disappointed me. Izuku clenched his fists, causing them to make a little sound, and to confirm to Toshinori that All for One wasn't lying about those parts of Izuku's life. Caused him mild anger at how sick All for One truly was, but All for One kept talking. AFO. Yet I kept my eye on you. I had a feeling that One for All was too far gone to be passed on to other quirk users by now. So, my now quirkless son was a prime target for a candidate. Well, that was if this baboon was able to figure it out before he passed it on. My plan worked like a charm in getting Izuku that damn quirk. So, how does it feel, All Might? Not only did you fail your own master's grandson, but you willingly gave One for All to the child of your sworn enemy. Toshinori grew in rage, bolting up in his chair ready to punch All for One right in the face. He wasn't feeling betrayed at all by Izuku. There was no way the boy could have known. He was angry that a sick man like this could exist. He turned his eye to Izuku, wondering what his face was, but to his shock, it just held an unamused look, borderline disappointed. Izuku spoke in a neutral tone without a hint of emotion. Izuku. You're lying. AFO. Now my son, there's no need to be in denial. Laughs. Izuku. I'm not talking about that. That cut All for One's laughter cut short as he eyed the boy in front of him. Izuku. You most likely could be my father. Hell, that guard over there could be my father for all I know. Because my father could be anyone since he's a deadbeat. What you're lying about is planning it all. It was a complete chance that I received One for All. You didn't plan for me to receive One for All at all. Hell, you never even saw it coming, and that probably drives you crazy. So, you tell me, All for One, how does it feel to be one that accidentally created your own downfall? Right now you're just trying to sow distrust amongst us. All for One's smile dropped into a frown, signally Izuku hit it right on the bullseye. Yet Izuku wasn't done. Izuku. You being my father. It could be a possibility since I know almost nothing about him besides what my mom has told me, which is very little. I honestly could care less if you were my father or not. It won't eat me at night wondering because I don't give a shit about him. When I was young, my mother told me that my father went to go work abroad and that he'll be back one day. I knew that was a lie from the very beginning, no matter how hard Mom tried to hide it. To me, my father has always been a deadbeat that left my mom to suffer on her own when she needed him most. If I'm honest, I'd prefer a deadbeat loser of a father over you. Come on, All Might, this loser isn't going to tell us anything. Izuku stood up from his chair and walked out of the room, leaving a fuming All for One and a flabbergasted Toshinori who slowly followed. Once they were out in the hallway, all the guards looked at Izuku with worry, which he ignored, while Toshinori followed behind before finally matching his step. The guards followed as well. Toshinori. Are you, Izuku? I'm fine. I mean it, master. I meant every word I said in there. Toshinori gave Izuku a pitiful and sympathetic look, which instantly sent Izuku over the edge, causing him to stop and punch the adjacent wall next to him without his quirk, but still causing a web of cracks to form on it. Toshinori immediately stopped looking at Izuku, and the guards backed up a tad bit in fear. Izuku. That doesn't mean that I'm not absolutely livid though. Muttered, never look at me like that again. Izuku muttered the last part before walking off, but Toshinori still heard it, causing him to sigh as he followed his protege out of the prison. The ride back to UA was quiet and cold as Izuku just looked out the window. Once they arrived back, Izuku immediately went to one of the fake cities and told Nezu on the intercom to release as many 0-pointers and 5-pointers as he could. Izuku leapt at a 0-pointer, punching its head clean off, causing it to crash down to the street. He then ran along the headless body and rocketed towards the next one, drop kicking its head, piercing it like a bullet as he came out of the other side. Izuku then went through the streets in a blur, destroying any robot he came across. Izuku roared in anger as he cleaved a 5-pointer in half with a crude long sword made of black whip. Izuku. Come on. Hearing his cry for a challenge, the bots converged on him. Izuku roared again as he charged at the nearest batch. Dash dash. An hour later, Izuku could be seen in a half-destroyed city sitting on the corpse of a 0-pointer while in a thinking pose. Everyone around him that day could tell that they should just leave him be for the day. Even Ochako did allow Izuku to calm down and come to her once he was ready to talk. Dash dash. The next day didn't help Izuku's patience either, nor alleviate his anger. If anything, it caused it to grow. His harem contract with the Hero Association was leaked to the general public, causing a small scandal. The terms of the contract weren't leaked, just that he had one. To combat this, the Hero Association rolled with releasing a press release saying they were going to announce this anyway, basically saying as a part of his deal Izuku must carry on his genes due to his quirk. Not completely true, but not completely false either. Anyways, the Hero Association released an online application for any lucky lady that wanted to be with Izuku. This leads to now, where Izuku and Ochako were sitting in a side office of UA All Might's couch office, with over 10 paper applications in front of them that needed to be gone through by the end of the day. Izuku handed Ochako the rejection stamp as he went through them. They made 3 piles. No, maybe Ochako will then get the final say, and yes. Izuku. Fucking safety Kamizen. Izuku muttered under his breath as he tossed an application into the small maybe pile, which Ochako picked up, inspecting with a scary smile. Ochako. Don't worry, honey. If we get through 1,000 every 10 minutes, we might still make that movie. You know, for our date. Ochako stared at him with a closed-eye smile that looked forced. Izuku's sweat dropped as Ochako slammed the rejection stamp hard on the application. There still wasn't a single yes out of the applications, but the two still had a long way to go. An hour had passed of this torture, with Izuku getting bored and confused with a lot of the applicants, while Ochako seemed to be getting more and more tick marks on her face as time passed. Her smile never faded, causing Izuku to scoot away from her a couple of times. Soon they reached the bottom layer of the stakes, so they were filled with another burst of vigor. They were cranking them out until Izuku froze at the one in his hand, causing Ochako to stare at him with confusion until she saw the name on it, making her look at Izuku, waiting to see what he did. In his hand was Momo's application. Izuku tried to calm himself down, as this soured his mood greatly, or even more than he already was. Since that lunch incident they had when he had returned, Momo had not tried once to talk to Izuku or Ochako. Yet she had the audacity to send this in. Izuku grabbed a rejection stamp and gently stamped it before tossing it with the other rejects. Ochako. Izuku. Izuku. No, Ochako. She still hasn't apologized. Hell, she hasn't even talked to either of us. She can't pretend like none of that happened and just join this. Ochako just sighed as she rubbed Izuku's hand, which calmed him down a little. He moaned in exhaustion as he rubbed his eyes. God, he was such a mess lately. It didn't help that the Hero Association also forced him to attend public PR events during the weekend. After a short break, the two continued back to finishing the papers. Izuku froze at the two applications in front of him while Ochako looked over his shoulder. They both shared a look for a second before Ochako stamped a green stamp on it, approving them. Narrator Pav. It was the day after Izuku and Ochako had finished the applications, leaving them with only two to pass the purge. The first was Najire, who Ochako actually was perfectly fine with since the older girl actually checked up on Ochako during Izuku's absence. The second one Ochako was a little more hesitant about, but Izuku was able to convince Ochako, this one being you. Izuku was kind of shocked by the two applications, but more by the fact of how he was able to charm them. He didn't remember anything too special he had done for them. To begin this off, the couple decided to have a small interview with each woman, just to make sure they understand fully what they are getting into. First up was Najire, who sat in front of Ochako and Izuku on a couch with a clearly nervous expression. Izuku just smiles at her, with Ochako doing the same, trying to calm the young woman down. Najire was dressed nicer than usual, making this a tiny bit awkward as Izuku and Ochako were just in their uniform while Najire was in a blue turtleneck dress with her hair all combed and styled. Izuku. So Najire. I want to clarify, this isn't like an interview to make sure you stay, it's more of an informational meeting to make sure you understand what you are getting into. That seemed to calm Najire down a little bit, but she was still obviously nervous, making Izuku chuckle, but he continued anyway. Izuku. Do you understand what this contract is, Najire? Or what this whole thing involves? Najire. Nope. I saw the opportunity to date you and just took it. Izuku and Ochako sweat dropped at that, but Izuku got a little red from the bluntness. Izuku. But why do that? I haven't done anything remarkable to make you like me. Or to make you agree to this messed up situation. Najire and Ochako frowned at Izuku for degrading himself again, but Ochako let Najire speak sense into him. Najire. Izuku. I fell in love with you because of you just being you. You were the first person outside of Mirio and Tamaki to accept me for me. I was bullied for a while, or more just verbally bullied, for my curiosity. People used to shame me for my curiosity and how energetic I was, to the point I became reserved and alone. If it weren't for Mirio and Tamaki, I'd probably still be like that, but Izuku, you were the first one besides them to truly accept me. And that was enough for me to fall for you. So, please don't bring yourself down because you are enough, Izuku. Izuku looked genuinely touched by the remark as a small smile came to his face, which Najire returned. Ochako also smiled as she grew more comfortable with Najire. Ochako cleared her throat, breaking the two out of their eye-gazing and refocusing Izuku to what the meeting was about. Izuku. Ah yes, like I said before, this meeting is to make sure you understand how this works. As you know, I have to meet some requirements pertaining to females before the end of my tenure here at UA. Which means that there will be other women. I just want you to know what you would be joining and how fucked up it is. Najire listened. Izuku. I must have a kid along with 5 wives or something similar by the end of UA. The government won't consider you anything but a slave to me, your public image would most likely tank, I won't be able to satisfy you due to all the women, and I obviously won't be the definition of faithful either. Would you still join if you knew all this? Najire just smiled. Najire. Is that all? Of course, I'll still join. I wasn't kidding, Izuku. I love you. Izuku looked touched but didn't say anything. The rest of the meeting was them talking to ease the awkwardness a little more, and then Najire and Izuku set up a date together for her to double check that she wants this life. It would be a movie date for both of them. Yu's meeting went a bit differently compared to Najire's. Instead of being nervous like the latter, instead, Yu was excited and downright happy, which confused the two interviewers but didn't question it. This time around they went right to explaining the situation and how it would work. This was how she reacted. Yu. Cool. Izuku. Really, that's it? Yu. Yeah, I mean, I understand I wouldn't be able to handle all that on my own. Yu looked at Izuku like a piece of meat, making Izuku wonder if this was a good idea. While Ochako just looked straight flabbergasted. Izuku. Why did you apply? Because you're hot. Izuku and Ochako sweat dropped at that, waiting for you to continue, but she just stared at the two. Well, besides the obvious, I would say I just had a small crush on you, Izuku. Ever since we met that day outside the apartment, I got a crush on you. At first, it was a physical one, but as I got to know you better, I realized how much better you were compared to any guy the first met before. You were kind, honest, hardworking, and never looked at me like a piece of meat. I knew you figured out I was Mount Lady the day you meet me, but you still pretended to not know to make me feel safe. I just love you, Izuku, and I want to give this a chance. Izuku just nodded with a smile, and the two planned their own date. You wanted to have dinner with him and was okay with letting Najire go first, since technically she's already been on a date with him. That got Izuku in trouble with Ochako since he didn't tell her. The next night Izuku stood outside the gates of UA wearing a comfortable shirt with some jeans. Yes, the shirt says comfortable shirt. Not long after, Najire showed up in a much better outfit. Insert whatever outfit you like. They went to a nearby movie theater where they watched a romance movie, much to Izuku's delight. Yes, I'm keeping Izuku a romance fanatic like Another Story. They enjoyed the movie and agreed that this probably was the right choice of relationship. The same happened in his dinner with you, though Izuku had to dress nicer for that one. It went well as well, leading to Izuku gaining 2 women for his requirements. Though his nerves weren't better as he saw several safety commission agents keeping eyes on him, making it obvious they are watching him. It was confirmed more the next day when he got a letter from them saying he'll start getting a monthly income that depends on how many women he has with him, plus eventually kids. That didn't sit right with Izuku at all. Momo stared at the application in her hands with a sad look, staring at the giant red "Rejected" on it. She knew it was to be suspected, but a false hope was in her that it might work, the reason it being false hope. It didn't help her confidence at all when she saw Izuku leave with Najire for their second date. It hurts her to see this, but she knows deep down what she has to do to earn at least a shot. Ochako was sitting on the couch in the lounge munching on some mochi while watching soap operas. She had to do something while Izuku was on his date. At first, she was a little bothered by all this, since she believed it was just going to be Izuku and her only, but after meeting Najire and you, she can honestly say that this wasn't that bad. Ochako. Wait, do I have a cuck kink? Ochako was knocked out of her crisis by someone clearing their throat, causing Ochako to turn to the noise. Standing at the entrance of the lounge stood Momo with a tense expression of both sadness and nervousness. Ochako just raised her eyebrow at that. Momo. Can we talk, Uraraka? Ochako looked stunned for a second before collecting herself. Ochako. Sure, let's head out for a bit. I know a spot where we can talk. Momo. Lead the way. The two girls left the dorm, walking to a small park inside of UA where Ochako plopped onto a bench overlooking the park and motioned for Momo to sit next to her, which the girl in question did. It was awkward for a second, with both just sitting in silence watching a group of students play basketball on a court. Momo was the one to break it. Momo. I'm sorry, Uraraka. I'm sorry for being such a bitch to you. I know nothing I say can change what I have done or my excuses, but I still just want to say what caused that out of me. Ochako didn't say anything, letting Momo rant. Momo. I always believed in the knight in shining armor saving the princess. My whole life had been planned out for me since the day I was born. Who exactly I was going to marry, what schools I'd be attending, what grades I'll get, and what job I'll have in the future. It was hell. Even as a child I realized that I was trapped in my own tower like the princess. So, when Izuku came up to me in that tunnel to check on me, it felt like my knight in shining armor had finally arrived. His presence alone gave me the courage to fully resist the destiny my parents had created. However, he already had his own princess that he cared for, you. Ochako didn't say anything. Momo. I was surprised, to say the least, but wasn't jealous or anything like that, yet. Because at first, I believed it was just a small crush on Izuku that I would get over. It didn't go away, and eventually, I figured out I just loved him. At first, I tried so hard to ignore you to not ruin the friendship and camaraderie we had formed, but it just got worse and I started to grow jealous of you. It got worse when he disappeared for a while and you started to act weird. Ochako looked at Momo as the girl continued to rant. Momo. My jealousy overcame me as it felt like you were hiding something from me. I was so blinded by it that I didn't even see that you were hurting as well from his absence. For that, I am deeply sorry for what I did, and if there is anything you need, please tell me. However, there is something I still need to come clean with. Ochako waited for the answer. Momo. I still love Uraraka. Even now I still do, but I know I can't anymore. I'll try my hardest to stop, but I know it'll be a hopeless venture. Don't take this as me trying to get sympathy, Uraraka. I don't deserve that from you. I know I don't have a chance any longer. I just needed to do this or I'd never be able to forgive myself. Ochako didn't say anything for a little bit before finally saying something. Ochako. I knew for a long time that you loved Izuku, and to be honest that made me feel jealous, but I never let it get to me. Until Izuku's injuries, that is. When I had that argument with you, I was angry, stressed, tired, and hurt. I never wanted that to be the end of our friendship. I was angry because of my jealousy and weakness to be unable to help Izuku. Stressed because of all the attention his absence brought, along with whether he would even make it out alive. Tired because of the countless sleepless nights watching him to make sure he wouldn't flatline, which he did a few times. And finally, hurt because the only reason I found out about what happened was because of damn chance. Ochako choked up at the last part, still showing that she still wasn't over all that. Not like you could ever get over watching the person you love being on their deathbed. Momo didn't say anything as Ochako composed herself once more. Ochako. I forgive you, Momo, but whether Izuku wants to give you a chance into this, God, I don't want to call it a harem, but that's what it is. Anyways, it's up to him if you get to join or not, but I'll put a good word in. Momo looked shocked but thankful as she gave a smile to Ochako, who returned it in kind. Ochako popped her lips as she got up. Ochako. Well, I got to go contemplate my life until Izuku gets back. Which is in a couple of hours. Please wait until tomorrow. I don't want to ruin one of the girls' dates. Momo. Of course, I'll just stay here a little longer. Ochako just smiled and walked back to the dorm, leaving Momo there to think it over. The next day Momo confronted Izuku and gave her genuine apology to him. Making Izuku smile softly at the girl, Momo was going to walk away since she did what she needed to do, but before she left Izuku asked her if she was free Saturday. Momo said she was, and that's how she earned her first date. Izuku stood on a sidewalk of a storefront staring at a jewelry store with Toshinori standing right next to him. Izuku let out a held breath as Toshinori gave him a comforting shoulder rub. Izuku entered the store and went right to a glass case with determination, like he already knew what he wanted. He looked into the glass, seeing a golden ring with a pink diamond at the top that was embedded in the metal. Izuku. I'll take this one. Later that day, close to the evening, Izuku visited an apartment in a rougher neighborhood. Izuku knocked on the door, opening to reveal an older-looking woman that was exact replica of his girlfriend. Mrs. Uraraka. Oh, Izuku, you're here, please come in. Izuku. Thank you, Uraraka-sama. Mrs. Yu. Oh, Izuku, you can just call me Cho. No need for the formality, we've known each other for a while. Cho led Izuku to the dinner table where Uraraka's dad was already waiting. Izuku sat down across from him, giving him a curt nod, which the father returned. The mother sat next to her husband, waiting for Izuku to talk. Mrs. Yu. So what's the occasion? You seemed like you wanted to talk to us really soon. Also, don't worry about all that stuff with you, the Vigilante, and Harem. As long as Ochako is happy and is content, it doesn't matter to us. However, if you break her heart, we break your legs. Izuku. Oh, fair, I guess. Mr. Yu. So what was it that you waited to talk to us about, Izuku? Izuku. Well, I guess let me get right to it. I want to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage. The room went silent for a second, making Izuku worry, until he saw the two parents give each other a look before just nodding at each other. Mr. Yu. You have our blessings. Izuku. Wait, really? Mr. Yu. Normally, we wouldn't accept this since you are way too young, but you and Ochako act way over your own age. Unfortunately, due to circumstances, but we trust you, Izuku. You keeping Ochako away from vigilantism for so long shows how much you care about her. We trust that you will continue to protect her." Izuku just smiled as he gave a firm nod. Izuku. Of course. Narrator Pav. Izuku stood outside a nice fancy restaurant with clear nervousness oozing off him, making a few of the customers waiting outside uncomfortable. He was wearing his red suit, Chihiryo's movie outfit, aka the only suit he owned at the moment. Tonight was his date night with Ochako and hopefully the night he will propose to her as well. He nervously fiddled with the box in his suit pocket, constantly checking the time with his watch even though he was 20 minutes early. Soon a limousine pulled up in front of the restaurant catching his attention. Ochako stepped out of the back of it in her pink dress, also two heroes' outfits. She smiled softly as she met eyes with Izuku. Izuku looked in the limo and saw Momo, who smiled and gave him a wink before closing the door and letting the limo drive off. Izuku just smiled at that, feeling proud for Momo. Izuku refocused and offered his hand to Ochako with a smile as he led her into the restaurant with his reservation. It was a nice dinner, but the two immediately felt uncomfortable while there. Minus all the staring they got due to who Izuku was, they just didn't feel like they belonged. They didn't use the right culinary getting them stares, they didn't understand the lingo, and the food was so expensive that even the money Izuku received from All Might could barely afford an appetizer. Hell, he doesn't think he'll even propose today due to how bad it went. The two awkwardly sat there picking at the free bread before Izuku cleared his throat. Ochako looked at him with a raised eyebrow. Izuku. Want to get out of here and get some burgers? Ochako. The scene cuts to Izuku and Ochako sitting on a park bench eating some burgers in silence as they watched a small concert happen in the park. Once they finished their burgers, they took a scenic walk through a storefront that was connected to a beach. They were hand in hand as they walked together, enjoying each other's company along with calm sea wind. Izuku. Sorry about that, Ochako. I thought it would be a great idea for a date night, but it was a mistake. Ochako. Don't say that, babe, it was still nice and I loved the thought you put into it. Now we know that style isn't our thing, but who knows? Maybe in the future, it could be our thing. Izuku could only hum in agreement as Ochako put her head on his shoulder as they continued walking. Izuku glanced to his side and he stopped in his tracks, making Ochako stare at him with confusion. Ochako. Izuku. Izuku motioned for Ochako to follow him as Izuku leapt onto the beach, not caring for his suit as he crouched into the sand, feeling it with his hands. Ochako hopped down the railing as well, standing not too far from Izuku with clear confusion on her face. Izuku. This is where my journey really began, where my efforts here took me to the present. Izuku sat down staring at the waves as they gently rocked back and forth. Ochako sat next to him, allowing Izuku to vent. Though it seemed more like reminiscing to her. Izuku. It was not long after All Might chose me as his successor, maybe a day or two after the fact. My body wasn't ready yet for the power, so he wanted me to clear this entire beach. You should have seen it, it was horrendous. The worst 9 months of my life, yet if it weren't for those 9 months of hell, I would have never gotten to live my dream. Never made it to Ua. Never stopped all those villains. And I never would have gotten to meet you. As Izuku uttered the last part, he turned to Ochako, staring into her chocolate eyes. Ochako just stared back, intrigued by what Izuku was getting at. Izuku. Without you, Ochako, I'd probably be in a darker place, and God, would all that fighting be so much harder. I never told you this, but while I was a vigilante, every time I got into a situation where it truly felt like I might die, what always made me go beyond my limits was you. Me wanting to make it back to you is what pushed me to a strength that I could never reach on my own. Ochako, I can't imagine a world where you aren't a part of my life, so I want to make sure you always will be. I know I could never make up for lying to you for so long, don't deny it, I know it still bothers you. So, I think this is the best thing I can do to make up for it. Izuku reached into his pocket and pulled out a black box, making Ochako's breath hitch in her throat. Izuku opened the box, revealing a silver ring with a pink diamond on the top of it. Ochako was frozen in place as tears slowly started to pool in the corner of her eyes. She couldn't move as Izuku moved until he was crouched in front of her with the box held out. Izuku. Ochako, will you marry me? Ochako blushed as the tears finally fell before a cheerful smile came across her face. She crashed into Izuku, squeezing him to death, but he laughed in joy as he embraced her. They both shared a kiss on the beach as Izuku slipped the ring on her finger. He couldn't have been any happier. Crazy. Izuku was getting fitted with some improvements for his costume in the support lab. He stood in the center of a platform as Mei casually eyed him up with obvious intentions, making Izuku a tiny bit uncomfortable. She also touched him up as well under the excuse of measurements, even though she had them already. Izuku was genuinely confused about what was happening. Izuku. So Mei. Why am I here again? Mei. Simple really. We are going to make a baby. Izuku immediately sputtered as he backed away from Mei, going into a wall. However, Mei followed him and pinned him to the wall with her chest while putting her arms on the wall behind him and looking up into his eyes with mischief. Mei. Oh, someone seems nervous. What? Scared of taking responsibility? Izuku. What are Mei? Come on, we're young. Mei pressed harder into him, even starting to lift her leg, pushing her lower parts into Izuku with a soft grind, making him groan. She smirked as she slowly leaned her head towards Izuku. Izuku was a new shade of red that shouldn't even exist. Izuku. We haven't even gone our first date. Mei. Oh, great idea Izuku. I'll see you next Saturday. Mei immediately got off of Izuku and went to her workbench, starting to mess with some contraptions. Izuku stood there dumbfounded as he was left flustered while Mei stood in front of him with her back to him, casually swaying her hips while humming a tune. Izuku. Did you really do all that to just get a date? Mei just glanced back and gave a sly smile. Mei. Who knows? Izuku cleared his throat as he messed with his pants into a different position and stood next to Mei, looking at the table. Izuku. Is that? Mei. Yes, it'll be ready soon. Once it's done, some of your freedom will be restored. Izuku. It's a start. Izuku said while picking up a small device that barely fit in the palm of his hand. An exact replica of the ankle monitor on his ankle. He gave a side hug to Mei, who returned it. Izuku. Thank you Mei. Mei. No problem. After all, I got to help my baby daddy. Izuku. Please stop. Mei. Narrator Pav. Izuku sat in the back of a limo while in his costume, surrounded by several agents, all making sure Izuku didn't try anything. He found it pretty funny that they thought they could handle him. However, he knew they were there so they can contact HQ if he went rogue, so they could target his loved ones. Eventually, they arrived at their location. Izuku was escorted out of the limo, allowing him to look up, laying eyes upon the Tower of Heroes, the HQ of the Hero Association. Izuku was called in by the president of the association for a quick talk, most likely about his new obligations to them. Izuku was quickly escorted to the president's office, not even having to wait or anything. After a short elevator trip, Izuku stood in front of a metal door where the pro-hero Hawks was waiting. He had a somber look, betraying his usual carefree smile, already putting Izuku on edge. Hawks. Come on, she's waiting. Hawks turned and opened the door for Izuku, allowing him inside. The office was spacious and dark, with only light being from several TV screens that showed various locations. In front of the screens was the president standing there watching them with her back turned to the two. Hawks closed the door as they entered the room. President. Izuku. Why does the Hero Association exist? Izuku was confused by the question out of the blue. Izuku. I don't know, Madam President. President. Because without order there is only chaos with no direction. Now imagine if that chaos gains direction, then all that leads to is destruction, despair, hatred, and evil. The very thing your father brought upon Japan for so many years. That's why governments came into existence, and that's why we exist. To bring order to this chaotic world, even if it means we have to get our hands dirty. I hope one day you will understand that more than your master did. Izuku stayed quiet during her little rant, even ignoring her addressing his shady origin. He could understand the logic in her words, but yet he couldn't help but feel like a "but" was going to appear. The president turned to Izuku and Hawks, showing a tired expression that made Izuku a little shocked, since it was the first time he had seen it. The president sat down in her office chair with a sigh and motioned to the two chairs before her. President. Please take a seat. We have many things to talk about, and they aren't easy either. The two listened to her command. She offered them both a cup of tea, but both denied the offer. President. As you both may or may not know, the hero license exams will take place in a week. Where your grade will be testing as well, Izuku. Nodded towards Izuku. However, you will not be joining them. Izuku didn't seem surprised by this as he was expecting a punishment. President. That's because you are going to do something else to earn your license. At the same time as the hero license exams, next week Kyoto will become a disaster zone and you will appear to restore order to the city. And I as a reward will award you a full hero license. Izuku sat there dumbfounded at what he was hearing. She had to be joking, right? There was no way she meant that. Izuku. Kyoto is fine though, what are you talking about? Izuku asked in an almost desperate tone. Izuku's heart dropped as the president looked at him with a sad look and hawks in a pitiful face. President. You're correct, Izuku. Kyoto is fine today, which is why I said next week. Izuku. You couldn't possibly mean. President. Sigh, exactly. 1 week from now and Terrorist will attack Kyoto and will flood the city completely. You will arrive exactly 15 minutes after, as you had seen the situation on the news and couldn't hold yourself back from helping even with you on thin ice. You will emerge as our new symbol, filling the gap your master had left behind. Izuku jumped up from his chair with clear anger and disgust on his face as he looked down at the woman. Hawks immediately summoned several sharp feathers that floated around Izuku's neck, but Izuku didn't even notice them as he glared at the president. Izuku. Are you fucking crazy? You can't possibly mean to kill that many people just for a fucking symbol. Hawks. Calm down, kid. Izuku. No, this is insane. We are talking about lives here. You're really willing to sacrifice so many people for what? A fucking symbol, President. Yes, that's exactly what I'm willing to do. You of all people should know how important a symbol is. We both know since All Might is gone, there is nothing left to truly deter villains any longer from causing chaos. If sacrificing a city for that safety is what is needed, I will gladly make that trade. Izuku. It doesn't have to be like this. I can become the symbol naturally. Just let me have some free control and I can become this country's hope in less than 3 months. President. That isn't a guarantee. This country is still not certain how they think of you. This will guarantee your popularity, and also 3 months is too much time to pass. I'm sorry, Izuku, this is going to happen whether you like it or not. Izuku. I refuse. President. That isn't an option. The president clicked a button on her desk, causing the TVs behind her to change to cameras, each one showing a live video of all his loved ones. Inko knitting a baby sweater in her living room while talking to Mitsuki. Ochako shows off her ring to the other girls in her class. All Might grading papers with the other teachers. Yu going on patrol in downtown. Najire talking with Mirio and Tamaki. Gran Torino watering his plants. Recovery girl going over doctor notes. Izuku's eyes were wide in fear as he watched all he loved right at death's door, and it was up to him to push them through it or pull them away. President. This may not be the best way or the only way, Izuku. I'm open-minded enough to understand that, however at the moment, Izuku, this is the most effective and will show immediate results. I hope a better one will show, but for the moment this is all we got. Now stay in line and I won't do something you'll regret. Izuku didn't respond as he plopped down back onto his chair with a sad look. The president released a tired sigh as she turned off the TVs. Izuku walked through the UA campus with a dead look. It had been several hours since his meeting with the president and had been at UA for a few hours, however he just couldn't bring himself to come face to face with his class. To the point, it was already midnight, and he just couldn't do it. He just feels so dirty and disgusted with himself that he didn't think he can fake it in front of them. Eventually, Izuku stood in front of the 1B dorms. He took a deep sigh as he put the biggest smile he could muster before entering. Izuku walked in and saw his whole class waiting for him to come back. They quickly surrounded him, asking where he had been and what the meeting was like. It took all of his willpower not to throw up right there. He was able to avoid talking too much as he said he was tired and wanted to go to bed. As he was walking up the stairs to his dorm, Kendo said something that made him stop. Kendo. Are you sure you are okay, Midoriya? You look a little sick. Izuku didn't answer right away as he stood on the stairs with his back to him. Izuku. I'm fine, thank you for asking though. Good night. Class 1B wasn't convinced. A small step. It was the following day and Izuku could be seen standing outside a small coffee shop. Today was his first date with Momo. Today though his only goal was to not let yesterday ruin today. This was also Momo's first ever date, so he wasn't going to disappoint her. Not long into his waiting, Momo finally arrived, which made Izuku confused as he saw her in a very expensive dress. He didn't bother questioning it as he saw it was her first date. Izuku. You will look good, Momo. Momo. Oh, thank you. I thought I was dressing too casual, but it seemed I had nothing to worry about. Izuku. That's casual. They quickly went in and sat down in a booth, both ordering a small lunch for themselves. The conversation was light and pleasant, making Izuku thankful since he had a lot of things on his mind. However, he didn't notice that Momo could tell something was bothering him. Momo. Izuku, is there something bothering you? Izuku froze at that as he met eyes with Momo, who looked at him with concern. Izuku didn't show a single emotion on his face, yet his face grew pale at the question, which worried Momo even more. Momo. Izuku, you're getting pale. Are you okay? Izuku. Yeah, I'm fine, Momo. Just the Hero Association telling me that I couldn't take the license exam got me restless is all. Momo. Oh, I see. He lied. Izuku. Sorry for worrying you, Momo, but I'm fine. I'll be fine, Izuku said in a way that made Momo think he was talking to himself rather than her. However, she dropped the issue not to make Izuku angry or make him feel like she was pushing him into a corner. Momo. Okay, Izuku, I believe you. The rest of their date went smoothly, making both parties happy and allowing both to put their worries in the back of their minds. The date ended with a hug which caused the sheltered girl to almost explode, making Izuku laugh at her prudence. Izuku escorted Momo back to her dorms and then went to the gym. He needed to grow stronger in order to be ready for next week. Too many lives were riding on him. Ultimate moves. That Monday back from the weekend was the previous 2 days. The 2 first-year classes could be seen inside standing around in their costumes. Today they had dual training where they would both prepare for the license exams and program for them until the license exam was to develop an ultimate move. Aizawa, Vlad King, and Toshinori stood in front of them to monitor the students. Aizawa. As you, problem children, know, soon most of you will take the provisional license hero exam. In order to prepare you all for this, you all shall develop an ultimate move. We will judge if your ultimate meets our standards, and our standards are how efficient it is, if it's effective, and if it qualifies as an ultimate. We will like to see some creativity on your part as well. So nothing like you made a bigger explosion with the same move. No, some creativity is all we ask for. The only time any of you will leave this room is for food, sleep, bathroom, and if your ultimate passes our approval. These robots will monitor your progress and announce to everyone how long it took you to complete the test. Now get to it. The teachers walked away, allowing the students to get to work, and as soon as the teachers walked away, the tension in the room grew heavy. The relations between the 2 classes had never been great from the start, but it seemed to have doubled due to Izuku's presence. Evident by the glares he received from some of the Class 1A, Izuku however paid them no mind as he turned to his classmates with a small smile. Izuku. If you guys need any help coming up with ideas, don't be afraid to come to me. The class nodded as Izuku started to walk away towards a secluded area before stopping in front of 1A. Izuku. The same applies to the rest of you. Izuku didn't wait for their response as he continued on his way. Bakugo growled seeing the retreating back of Izuku, but scoffed as he exploded himself onto the top of one of the many pillars in the gym, courtesy of Smentos. Izuku arrived in a corner of the gym and immediately asked Smentos to make him a human dummy, to which the pro hero complied. Izuku started muttering to himself as he went over the many combos and moves he could do. All brand new theories and concepts popped up in his head to create an ultimate move, yet his thoughts were lonely. Ever since he learned that AFO was his father, the past users haven't said a word to him, not even Nana. The second and third also took back Fajin and Gearshift. Izuku shut out those thoughts as he created a black chain from his hand. Izuku. Well, let's see if this works. Izuku started spinning the black chain around him, looking for the right way to do this. He then saw it and swung the chain at the dummy, wrapping it completely up like a straitjacket. Izuku then activated his electric gauntlets, electrifying his chain, causing it to electrocute the dummy until it exploded. Izuku. Black whip variant. Black chain, electric chair. A loud buzzer sounded out in the arena, getting all the students' attention, confused about what it could be. Robot. Izuku Midoriya. Pass. Time. 2 minutes and 34 seconds. All. What? Kirishima. How? We've barely got here. Denki. Damn, he's a monster. Bakugo ignored the two idiots shouting as he growled, trying to focus on his ultimate. Shoto glared in the direction of Izuku before once again trying to focus on his ice. Izuku stood there staring at the dummy, having ignored the announcement. Izuku. Effective but still inefficient. I used almost 60% charge on my gauntlets. I need to figure out how to lower the usage, maybe talk to Mei. Also, maybe there's a better way to wrap them. I could probably copy Kamui Woods and make a better capture. Experiments for another time. Let's see how the others are doing. Ochako huffed and puffed as she tried her ultimate on top of a pillar. Izuku hovered beside her, causing her to look at him with a raised eyebrow. Izuku just gave a smile to his fiancée. Izuku. Need help. Ochako. Number. Izuku. Ochako. I appreciate the offer, babe, I really do. But I need to do this myself. I can't rely on you for everything, or I'll just hinder my own progress and be a burden on you. I refuse to be used as leverage against you in the future. Momo will say the same thing, so don't bother asking her. Izuku looked at Ochako with worry as she once again restarted her attempt. Izuku. I understand. However, Ochako, you have never been a burden to me. Just remember that. Ochako didn't reply, making Izuku sigh as he hovered away. He quickly landed in the middle of the gym and immediately Monoma walked up to him with a frown. Monoma. Yeah, it seems I need your help after all, Izuku. Izuku. So what seems to be the problem? Monoma. I think you already know. It's my quirk. It's not the best for ultimates or even normal moves. You got any ideas? Izuku. You're looking at your quirk all wrong. Monoma. Izuku. You view it as a limitation instead of as an advantage. Sure, you are limited on what quirks you can use at any time due to either circumstance or environment. However, you can lean into that, especially once you become a pro. The villain will never know what to suspect. You are a jack of all trades, Monoma. Once you embrace that, you can become unstoppable. That's all I'm going to tell you, the rest is up to you to figure out. Izuku walked away, letting the thoughts fester into Monoma's mind. Monoma just stared at Izuku in awe before smiling as he walked away to his area, slapping Tetsu, Yui, and Awase on the back as he did. Izuku smiled at that as he walked to a red-haired guy punching a wall in anger. He remembered him as the boy he beat up at the sports festival. Izuku. You good there, bud? Kirishima. Yeah, just need to let out some steam. Izuku. Why can't figure out an ultimate move? Kirishima. That obvious, Izuku. Yeah, Kirishima. I didn't want to do this to the guy that kicked my ass, but any ideas? Izuku. You can maybe try getting harder. Kirishima. Pardon, Izuku. I mean, why don't you try to create a form as your new ultimate, like a form where you're nigh indestructible? But that's just a thought. Izuku walked away, allowing Kirishima to think it over. Izuku helped a few more people before he decided to leave the gym. As he walked out of the gym, Bakugo finally passed and looked for Izuku for his reaction. However, all he saw was Izuku's back as he left the arena, making Bakugo clench his fist in anger. Narrator Pav. It was the day Izuku would question everything he had ever known, the day the world's worst natural disaster in human history struck a crucial city in Japan. The day Kyoto drowned. On this dreary morning, Izuku could be seen sitting in the back of a limo parked on a nearby hilltop over the target city. Izuku was in his full costume with the president sitting in front of him in her usual business attire. On Izuku's side were several heavily armed guards, all aimed at him, making sure he didn't try anything. However, Izuku didn't pay them any mind as he kept his eyes solely on the president, who instead stared out the window looking at her beloved hometown with a melancholy look. His class and Class 1A had gone to take their provisional exam. Izuku was able to easily avoid their suspicion of him not going with him, saying he was still facing the consequences of his actions. Said he was barred from the exam until his second year, yet he knew some of his girls knew something was up. But he can deal with that later. Izuku. So, when does it begin? Asked Izuku with a noticeable angry growl. The president didn't answer at first as she took a deep breath, obviously trying to calm herself down. Then a soft voice broke from her lips. Madam. It begins now. Izuku's eyes widened immediately as he turned to look out the window, but could only see the dreary clouds releasing heavy rain, yet that's all he could see. Until a guard next to him handed him a phone that had a video from a drone of a hooded man standing on the shores of Lake Biwa raising his hands up, making the water react violently to his movement. In an instant, a massive wave rocketed out of the lake, taking all its water and headed straight towards the city. The drone feed cut out, signaling it got consumed by the wave, but Izuku didn't need the feed anymore as watched through the window the tsunami consumed the city in moments. Izuku panicked as he watched the city become flooded. He went to go help until a gun was pressed into the back of his head, making him stop. That's when he noticed they had all pressed their guns into his body to stop him from going. Madam. Sorry Izuku, but you cannot leave yet. It would look too suspicious if you were to arrive almost instantly after the disaster. Uwa is almost across the entirety of Japan. We shall wait for the amount of time it would take you to get here at your current speed. 20 minutes. Izuku. I can make that distance in 5. Madam. Probably, but the public doesn't know that, do they? Izuku couldn't respond as his eyes kept darting between her and the dying city. He couldn't do anything but growl in frustration as he shut his eyes and looked away from the carnage. In his head he begged for the gods to forgive him for what he had done. They didn't hear him as they had also turned their eyes from the carnage. It was the longest 20 minutes of Izuku's life. Until the guns backed away from him. No one stopped him when he rocketed through the roof, caving it open. The president just stared at the hole before sighing, keeping her eyes away from the city. Madam. Get us out of here. Izuku was rocketing toward the city at 80%, his current max. He surveyed the streets and could only see torrents of dark waves that flooded the streets. The water was so high it was easily reaching 20 floors on skyscrapers. Izuku activated danger sense and was immediately overwhelmed by all the signals, and he had only activated it for this portion of the city. Once it spread to the whole city, Izuku felt like he wanted to cry, feeling all the pain around him, not only from the stabbing sensation in his brain that was causing a nosebleed, but also the emotional pain he felt from all the anguish around him. Izuku regained himself and dived down into the water, breaking through its surface. He resurfaced, and in his arms and on his back were 6 civilians, all coughing out water, and from his body were several tendrils that were wrapped around 8 more people, some coughing out water, others were still. Izuku took them to a roof and dropped them down, before overlooking the edge, already sensing the next batch he was getting. He glanced towards a civilian who was kneeling, catching their breath. Izuku. Anyone I bring, help them. Civilian. Yes sir. Izuku jumped back down, going into the water, and an instant later came out, now with 10 people on his back and 15 wrapped in his tendrils. Izuku dropped them on the roof and turned back to the water and sent several large tendrils into the water and huffed as he slowly lifted a bus out from the water. He then freed one hand and formed a black buzzsaw from the whips, cutting the bus a long way and exposing the roof. He tore all the seats out, ignoring the bodies he had to put down, and harnessed it with a black whip and stuck a reinforced floating system from his bags, making it floatable. He tossed it into the water. Seeing it worked, he quickly rocketed around the block, saving anyone he came across and stuffing as many people he could find into it before lifting onto a roof and emptying it out, and repeating. He continued like this for a while until he thought it was taking too long, so he dropped it on a roof one last time and started rocketing throughout the city at his full speed. If you were looking from above overlooking the city, you could see a trail of green lightning bouncing around the city, illuminating it in a bright green, with the lightning moving so fast it started overlapping on each other, making it seem like the lightning would shine forever. On the ground, Izuku was saving anyone he could find, moving so fast a lot of the people he saved didn't even realize they had been saved until they found themselves on a roof. Izuku was also able to get into the remaining hospitals and get the staff and patients to the many roofs he had filled with civilians. Izuku yelped as he slipped while trying to bounce off a building, messing up his launch, making him crash into the side of a building. Izuku rolled on the floor until he fell on his back. He panted as he lay there, feeling every single portion of his body felt on fire from his quirk use, yet he forced himself into a sitting position as he continued to pant. He couldn't stop now, there were still so many more crying out for help. As Izuku thought that, he felt a sharp pain making him turn in a particular direction inside the building he crashed in. More specifically, the elevator shaft. Izuku picked himself up and reactivated OFA as he forced the shaft doors open. He felt the danger down, making him look to see an elevator almost submerged in water along with several tired screams for help. Izuku hopped down and pried the roof open like paper, revealing 10 people desperately trying to keep their heads above water. Izuku reached out his hand and gave them a reassuring smile. Izuku. Let's get y'all out of here. *. 1 hour later. It had been 1 hour and 20 minutes since the tsunami had impacted Kyoto, 1 hour since Izuku arrived on the field, and it has been 10 minutes since actual support came via helicopters. The sent heroes quickly went to work on the countless civilians on the rooftops. They would have helped in the evacuation process, but they felt like they would only get in the way of the hero covered in green lightning, so the only ones out were the water-based heroes. In the middle of the drowned city, Izuku could be seen under the water in a bank lifting the vault out of its place. He could see several heartbeats inside. It seemed some used it as shelter before the water overtook everything. Izuku lifted it and rocketed out of the underwater building and placed the vault on a roof, opening it and helping the people out. Izuku looked like shit, completely covered in mud that had stained his costume and with him completely soaked in water and sweat. He was exhausted and desperate from this past hour. He had danger sense activated this whole time, and every time a signal would go away, he would never know if it was because they were saved or if he was too late. Izuku helped the last person out of the vault. He immediately launched out off the roof, heading towards the nearest signal, which was a collapsing parking lot with almost all of it underwater, and the only reason it wasn't was due to it being on a hill. Izuku went into the middle portion of the lot and found his target, a car half submerged in the water with a woman and her daughter trying to break their back window open but failing. Izuku arrived at the back and signaled for them to back up a little, which they complied. Izuku punched the window, shattering it, and offered his hand to them, which the mother accepted while holding her daughter close with the other one. Izuku let out a tired sigh as he smiled at them. Izuku. Come on, let's get you somewhere safe. Izuku put the woman in his arms bridal style and took off towards a shelter to drop her off. The rain was still coming down hard, making Izuku shiver slightly as he flew to a nearby roof. He had already given his hood to a child from before, so he only had his costume to protect him from the elements. But that didn't matter, so what if he got sick after this? He'd probably deserve it. As Izuku gently placed the mother and daughter down, he watched as a nearby building began to shake before a portion started to crumble down. There were hundreds of people on the roof, so Izuku acted quickly. Izuku. Get the people off that roof. I'll try to slow it down. Hero 1. Alright. Izuku activated his contacts, ordering it to show the structural weaknesses, which was the bottom floor close to the lobby. Izuku activated the respirator, making a metal mask click onto the bottom portion of his face. Izuku quickly charged straight into the water at the same moment as the building started to fall straight down. Izuku made it time to arrive at the bottom floor in the water, holding the building up in an atlas pose. He reinforced his knees with black whip, making leg wraps, and sent out more black tendrils around several supports in the building. Thus Izuku held on as long as he could as he pushed his body to its limits of 95%. His body ached and pleaded for Izuku to stop, but Izuku ignored it as he continued to hold on even when his body felt like it wanted to tap out. Izuku tried to use danger sense to figure out how many were still on the roof, but it was cloudy at best due to the people being confused and his danger sense already exhausted from overuse. Until he felt the load on his brain lightened and everything felt clearer. 38. 27. That's how many were remaining on the roof. In his head, it was like glowing orbs moving around in certain directions. He opened his eyes and glanced up, seeing several orbs of energy through the wall. Izuku. Neat. And 0. As Izuku felt the last person leave, he exerted massive strength, pushing the building up like a powerlift, and darted out before it could fall on him. He broke through the water and watched as the apartment collapsed, falling into the water. Izuku let out a breath as he floated in the air before lightning started to spark off him. He still needed to save more people. Asterisk 2 hours later. The lobby of the provisional exam was completely filled as everyone looked at the massive TV which showed an overhead of the destroyed Kyoto with a voiceover from a reporter. It had been the beginning of their written portion when the tragedy happened, however they continued on since it sounded like just rumors. It wasn't until they finished the first practical portion that they realized it was true. Which led to now. Reporter. As of 3 hours ago, a tsunami made from the water of the nearby Lake Biwa has crashed into the city of Kyoto. 2 hours ago the heroes along with rescue workers had arrived to begin rescue efforts. However, what they didn't know was that someone had already begun rescue efforts. From our reports for the past 3 hours, a mysterious hero has been trying their hardest to save as many people as they can. Here is a satellite image of them not long after they arrived in Kyoto, which was about 20 or so minutes after the disaster began. The screen changed to a green light show zooming through Kyoto at lightning speeds, illuminating the city with green trails. Ochako recognized it instantly, making her sigh as a small smile crossed her face. Ochako. Should have known. Momo. What? Ochako. You'll see. The image changed back to the reporter who was wearing a rain jacket while standing on one of the many safe roofs. Reporter. As you can see, this hero is speedy and most likely strong, but no reports exist of a hero having that quirk. Unless, wait, someone's landing here. Good Samaritan. The camera turned, showing Izuku floating down onto the roof holding 2 children in his arms that he placed down. They both quickly ran to 2 adults who embraced them. Izuku looked like shit. He was soaking wet with mud, blood, and other substances on him. He looked tired but yet still stood tall, knowing everyone's eyes were on him. He turned to a hero near him, making them stand straighter. All. Izuku. Midoriya. Yelled Class 1A and 1B while Bakugo growled in the back as he angrily clenched his fist. Izuku. That was the last civilian I could find. I'm going for the villain. Hero 2. Right. As Izuku turned to leave, someone called out for him. Reporter. Good Samaritan. Why are you doing this? If you get caught you could never see the light of day. Why would you risk it? Izuku stared at the reporter for a second before looking around and seeing that everyone else was waiting for him to say something. To hear why he would risk everything for them. So, he gave a small smile to them all. Izuku. Because it was the right thing to do. Also, just call me Izuku. I never really liked the ring to Good Samaritan. They stared at Izuku with awe as he turned around and rocketed himself towards Lake Biwa where the villain most likely was. Izuku felt absolutely disgusted with himself. The words, the smile, everything about what he said made him feel sick. As Izuku got closer, he could see a man in a trenchcoat standing on an overturned building. Izuku crashed down on the other side of the building, making a large boom, tilting the building and cracking it. Villain. Hey, watch the merchandise, goddamn, you heroes are always crazy. Now let's head back to. The villain was interrupted as in an instant Izuku had the villain's neck in his hand, lifting him in the air while choking him. Izuku was filled with uncontrollable rage once he saw the villain's uncaring face, which seemed more annoyed that his day was wasted. It took everything in his power not to kill the villain right then and there. So, instead, he slammed him straight into the building, causing it to crater and knocking the villain out. Izuku started to control his breathing to calm down as he watched the effects of the villain's unconscious slowly stop the rain and cause the water to surge back into the lake. Though his job was far from over. For the next 8 hours, Izuku helped in relief efforts for the disaster. Helping in the search for survivors or bodies. Izuku knew it was just for bodies. He had already gotten every single survivor in the city. It was the least he could do. After all, it was his fault. Izuku stood in the middle of downtown Kyoto, seeing the destruction that had devastated the once beautiful city. Turned over cars, collapsed buildings, and many waterlogged bodies. It was like a layer of hell had come up to the earth, and it was all his fault. Izuku collapsed to his knees in front of a pile of rubble and started digging with his hands. Even when the other heroes and rescue teams offered him tools or refreshments for him to use, he refused, saying he didn't deserve them, as he continued to work until even the gloves on his hand fell apart from overuse. Even then he didn't stop and continued till the night. After the 8 hours, the entirety of the first years could be seen chilling in the commons of the 1B building, waiting for Izuku to return. Since they just wanted to talk with him and check on him, it was well into the night and still hadn't heard anything from him. Until the door opened, making them all turn towards it, and any sense of sociality died as they watched the mess of Izuku walk in. He was no longer wet, but his costume was ruined from mud, dried blood, and wet spots. However, what Izuku's girls noticed first was his hands, wholly bloody and raw, bleeding onto the floor with the gloves basically gone. "Ochako. Izuku, your hands," said Ochako with a worried soft tone as she walked towards him with Momo on her heels, also equally worried. Izuku didn't acknowledge them at first, as he was just staring forward with a 1,000-yard stare with a frown until he refocused and looked down at the two. "Momo. Izuku." Izuku smiled at them as he gently took his injured hand away from Ochako's grip, making her immediately suspicious. "Izuku. It's okay, just a scrape, I'll clean it later. Please, just for tonight let me be alone for a little while. That includes all of you, please." Ochako didn't want to let him go, since she knew him well enough that something was hurting him. Yet she could tell that he wouldn't budge today and maybe not the next one after that. So, she decided to trust him. "Ochako. Okay, if you need anything don't hesitate to let us know." "Okay, Izuku." "Yes Ochako, I understand, thank you." So, Izuku walked past her and went to his room, ignoring the pitiful stares everyone gave him. Izuku entered his room and closed the door behind me, allowing his smile to drop. He walked into the restroom and slowly tore his costume off his body, revealing shriveled, bruised skin, and slowly tore his gloves off, revealing raw, bleeding palms. Izuku ignored the pain as he turned on the water into scalding, just standing in the shower alone with his thoughts. No one would ever know that some of the water going down his face wasn't from the shower. Why was he so pathetic? The water pooled in his tub since he forgot to unplug it, and as he looked into the pooling tub, all he could see was hundreds of faces of horror and fear looking up at him with water-logged faces with gray skin. Izuku began to sob in the shower as he muttered to himself, "Izuku. I'm so sorry." Over and over again. The following day Izuku was dragged out of the dorms by police and taken to a press room in the Hero Association HQ. That's where they presented Izuku his full pardon, along with a full hero license. It had gone perfectly as she had planned. The villain had gotten killed due to him underestimating his quirk and drowning in the water, or that's what they told the press at least. 848,932. That was the casualty estimation that was given. All of them were solely killed through his hands. He was no hero. Narrator Pav. The early morning sun broke through the horizon, lighting up the new day. Izuku didn't really find it all that beautiful as he sat on top of a pile of junk staring at the sunrise with a frown. Why was it so dull? Before this probably would have made him cry due to the beauty, but now it was a light that was bothering his eyes. When had he become broken? Izuku was knocked out of his thoughts by his hand reflexively catching a wrench thrown at his head. He looked down and saw Mei staring up at him with a frown. She was in a greasy tank top with her hair not in dreads but instead in twin ponytails with her hair in its straight style. "Mei. Hey, I didn't take you on this date to mope. You're here to help me find and carry stuff." Izuku. A+ choice of a date there, Mei. "Okay, I'll come down." Izuku hopped down, landing next to Mei, making her stare up at him with a tad bit of worry, but Izuku just gave her a smile that made her feel warm inside and smile fondly back at him. However, Mei caught herself and patted him on the shoulder as she pointed to a large washing machine. Izuku laughed at her coldness as he began walking towards the large machine. He easily lifted it over his shoulder and tossed it on the back of a pickup truck. He knew Mei wasn't being mean or even inconsiderate with her date choice. If anything, it was extremely considerate of her. He knew she could tell there were a lot of things on his mind, which included Kyoto. So, she gave him something where he could just zone out or even let out some frustration of his on the trash. Instead of choosing an outlet where he would be swarmed by the people, she chose a quiet outing where both would get something out of it. He smiled as he lifted a treadmill she had pointed it, and she returned her own gentle smile as she followed behind him. "Mei. I have something to give you once we get back." Izuku glanced to the entrance of the dump, seeing two agents watching them from a distance, before he whispered something to Mei. "Izuku. Is it what we talked about?" Mei just nodded, making him smile as he tossed the treadmill onto the truck. It was almost time. 3 hours later. Izuku watched Mei as she fiddled with the ankle monitor on his, ankle. They were inside the support lab near her desk. It was well into midday on a weekend, so no one should be disturbing them during this serious situation. After all, one slip up and everyone is dead. Mei grabbed an identical monitor and put it near Izuku's ankle while holding a screwdriver in her other. Mei. Okay, I got 3 seconds after this EMP to activate the false monitor, allowing this to stop working. The EMP's radius is about a room wide in order to avoid suspicion. If we fail though, all the others are dead to right. You ready? Izuku. Yes. Mei. Okay, here we go. Mei took a deep breath as she pressed the button, making a loud boom go off as the EMP activated, knocking the lights out. In seconds, Mei swiftly stabbed the screwdriver in taking the monitor off and stuck the decoy before the lights even turned on. Once it did and the monitor started to beep to live as accumulated to the signal, the two sat in silence as it connected but waited for the agents to come in or his danger sense to go off, but nothing happened, making them smile as they embraced. Izuku. Thank you, Mei. Mei. No probable MMH. Mei was interrupted by Izuku kissing her, which she quickly returned by wrapping her arms around him. The kiss only lasted for a few minutes, but it was all the two needed. It ended when Mei tapped his shoulder, making him back up. Mei. As much as I want to continue all the way to home base, I need to explain a few things about it. Izuku. Shame. Mei. Hush before I rip your pants off. Clears throat. Okay. First, this is only useful for your night activities. Once you have to go out to the public, we need to attach the old one, which will be easier since this one is owned by me. The only hiccup would be to take it back off, but I'll manage. Izuku. Thank you, Mei. Mei. No problem. Now let's see how far this batter can run. Mei smirked lustfully as she reconnected with Izuku. God, what would he do without her? That night, Izuku sat on a rooftop with a smile overlooking the nightlife city for the first time in a long time. He was finally free in one aspect from that witch. Now he could do some things he wanted to do. Look into this new league, which would be very tedious and annoying, but it needed to be done. Something had been bugging Izuku ever since Kyoto. What was the difference between a hero and a villain? What caused a person to choose which side? So, first, he wanted to see if it was the origin and where to better start than the leader. Izuku glanced at the manila folder with a tiny picture of Shigi in the corner. It was everything All Might was able to get for him that the association had on Shigaraki. Which wasn't a lot, but it was the start that led him to where he was looking. The remnants of a home destroyed by a quirk awakening. Izuku hopped down to the front side, steeping over the old police tape. He forced the door open and slowly navigated through the crumbling house, having to use Black Whip several times to support a crumbling portion. Izuku came across an office where he picked up a paper showing some birth documents, which he stuffed in the folder. He also found some home tapes, wedding certificates, and other documents which he added to the folder to review. As he was about to leave until he saw something sticking out of a broken floorboard, he knelt down and picked up a grimy photo. A picture of Nana holding a smiling child. Izuku. Sorry, Nana. It doesn't seem like that bastard was lying. Izuku didn't get a response, making him sigh as he climbed out of the room and continued his journey. Ever since Kyoto, they had all been a little quiet compared to before. Oh, who was he kidding? It had been ever since his talk with AFO. Not a single word had come from then till now between the two parties. Hell, the second user had almost immediately taken back gearshift after the news. He couldn't lie that it didn't hurt him when the contact ceased. But he just needed to keep moving forward for everyone's sake. While in his thoughts Izuku had made it to the epicenter of the destruction, he crouched down, hovering his hand over an imprint of a small child's palm which had indented the ground, and Izuku could only see the dried blood on the ground. He closed his eyes and muttered a small prayer before flying off. He had gotten what he needed. I'm sorry. Izuku looked up with both a confused and disgusted look as he laid back on a couch messing with his phone. He was dressed in a tank top with black joggers. In front of him were Mineta and Denki in begging poses as they stared at him. Izuku. How'd I what? Mineta. How did you get so many hot babes on your... Denki. He means how did you get the riz to get so many girls to be with you? Both. Please teach us your ways. They were inside the common room of 1B since Kendo had invited 1A for a small get-together and to bridge the relations between the two classes. It had been a great success, with a lot of them apologizing to Izuku and starting to get to know him, making him smile at that. The only two people who weren't present were Bakugo and Shoto. Right now though, everyone was staring at the trio waiting for Izuku's response. Izuku just laughed as he leaned forward and motioned for the two to listen up. Ochako, who was sitting at the table with the girls, stared at Izuku with a sad look. She knew her fiancé well, to the point it felt like they'd been married for years already. So she knew when he was faking his laugh and smile. Izuku. Okay, listen close you two. First things first, you need to have nice unruly green hair like me. Second, you need to have a killer body like mine that could take a good beating in great time. And the final thing, well, you can't really do much about that besides being lucky with genes. Isn't that right, Ochako? That resulted in Izuku getting a mug thrown at him, which he caught, making the whole class laugh as a red-faced Ochako glared angrily at her fiancé before sighing as she covered her face and sat back down. However, she glanced up at Izuku, watching him laugh at Denki, who looked relieved while Mineta looked completely heartbroken, yet she could see the immense sadness behind that smile in his eyes. Something was eating at him and it was destroying him inside. Momo, who was sitting next to her, coughed into her hand as she tried to die down her blush before looking to Ochako and seeing her sad stare. Momo. Ochako. Ochako. Momo. Is something wrong? Ochako. Sigh, it's Izuku, something bothering him badly, but he's not telling us. Momo. Really? I haven't noticed anything different about him. Ochako. That's what makes him suspicious. After Kyoto, he should be worse, but yet he's acting like it never happened. You'll learn him better as time passes, but at this moment Izuku is hurting. Normally I'd wait for him to come to me, but this time it feels different. I'll talk to him tonight. Momo. Right. Just let me know if you need some support. Ochako. Of course. It was silent between the two after that as they continued to watch the shenanigans in the common room until a blush reappeared on Momo's face as she whispered something to Ochako. Momo. Is Izuku really gifted, down there? And you too, did that? Ochako. Momo. What? I'm just wondering. Ochako. Sigh, it's fine. Smirks, well, you'll find out yourself eventually. Momo blushed like a tomato as she turned away, causing Ochako to smile softly as she continued to stare at Izuku. That night, Izuku was sitting on the side of his bed just staring at the wall with a complete blank look. He tried to keep his eyes open, but eventually, they closed due to exhaustion. All he saw was water at his feet, with eyeless faces trying to drag him down into the watery depths. Izuku's eyes were full of panic as he tried to get away from the swollen hands, but latched onto him, not letting him go as they tried to pull him under. His head was almost under. He started hyperventilating as he tried to resist until his head was submerged. Knock knock. Izuku's eyes widened as he took deep breaths with sweat rolling down his face. He refocused his mind, allowing him to hear the knock properly. Izuku. Who is it? Ochako. Just me. Izuku got his breath steady as he put his head into his palms before letting them fall down into his lap. He still hadn't noticed that his leg was tapping uncontrollably against the floor. He glanced down and held his leg down with his hand as he calmed his voice down again. Izuku. It's unlocked. The door creaked open, revealing Ochako in her pajamas as she walked in and sat down next to Izuku. She didn't say a single word, as she intertwined her arm with Izuku's and laid her head on his shoulder. Izuku stared down at her head with a quivering lip and wavering resolve. Ochako didn't need to say anything to Izuku for him to understand that she knew something was bothering him. That almost broke him down, but what did was she backed up and grabbed his shoulders with her hands, forcing him to face her. Their eyes met. Her brown eyes of soft caring looked into his broken emerald eyes that could only cower under her gentle gaze. Then he broke. He collapsed into her chest and she wrapped her arms around his head as he began sobbing. Ochako tried to hold her own tears back as she watched her loved one so broken. A person that since she had ever met had been an unmovable wall, but now it was like watching a stone wall crumble before her eyes, revealing something everyone seemed to forget: he was a kid. Tears fell down Ochako's face as she closed her eyes while embracing Izuku, letting him release it all out onto her. After all, this was the minimum of her duties as someone who would stay at his side for the rest of her life. Once Izuku was done letting it out, Ochako only asked one thing. Ochako. What really happened, Izuku? He told her everything. Ochako went to sleep angry as she lay in that bed with Izuku. However, she could guarantee one thing, she wasn't telling a soul about this. Not even the girls, this something only Izuku could share once he's fully healed. A talk. The next morning, Okacho calmly stirred a cup of coffee in front of her. She was in a nice dress with a long skirt on and leggings. She and the rest of the students were still on a deserved break from the success of the exams, but all she could think about was Izuku. Especially due to what he told her about the truth of Kyoto. Her hand tightened around the mug in a cold anger. Even till the next day it still deeply angered her what those bastards made Izuku do. Yet, it also saddened her that Izuku tried to hold all that in. It could have killed him if she hadn't noticed it. What if? Momo. Ochako, are you okay? Ochako. Huh. Ochako refocused on reality, seeing Momo, Najire, Yu, and Mei staring at her with a sense of worry on their faces. Ochako had decided for the women of Izuku to start meeting together to get to know each other better since they would be together for a while. This was their first ever meeting and yet here she was spacing out. Momo. You were out of it for a little bit, are you okay? Ochako. Yeah, just a little tired and was thinking about something. So where were we again? Yu. I was asking if it's true about Izuku's gift. Ochako chuckled as she drank her coffee. Yu. What? This is a serious question, I need to know what I'm working with. Ochako. Why? Is that the only thing you care about for Izuku's love? Teasing. Yu. Of course not. I just want to know the details. Mei. From when I felt him up he seemed to be packing a monster. Ochako. Damn, Mei, definitely doesn't sound wrong or anything. Maybe you should say that louder for the kitchen to hear as well. Mei just chuckled as she rubbed the back of her head in embarrassment. Najire. I have to agree with Mei. When I rubbed into it on accident, I thought he had a gun on him. Well, I guess he had a different type of shooter. Momo. Najire-senpai. Najire. Teehee. You. Well, there is still only one who can confirm. Ochako just smiled as she finished her coffee. Yeah, this was a good idea. Ochako. Well, let's just say if you here upgraded in a few dimensions she would still struggle. All the girls blushed the implication while Ochako just smiled as she messed with her cup. Yes, she could get used to this type of life. Another net of support for her and more importantly for Izuku. Meanwhile, Izuku was watching TV in the common room with a dull face as he watched a foreign basketball game. He was better if he was being honest. After his night with Ochako, his head felt a lot clearer along with his soul. He still wasn't over Kyoto, but it was starting to become something he could live with. Maybe he should open up more. Izuku was knocked out of his revelation by someone putting a drink in front of him. He glanced up and saw Tetsu giving him a toothy grin. Tetsu. Hey Midoriya, the guys and I are going to the mall to hang out. Want to come? Izuku smiled as he accepted the drink and stood up. Izuku. Sure, why not? Maybe it wouldn't be so bad to learn to open up. After all, he finally had something that his past self never had. Friends. Narrator Pav. Izuku's face held nothing but absolute shock as he stared at the president's neutral face who had her eyes on the many documents in front of her, as if what she just told Izuku was nothing serious. He stood inside her dark office with the only light being the little desk lamp illuminating her face. At her side was Hawks, who avoided Izuku's eye contact, instead finding a corner of the room more interesting. Izuku. What did you say? President. You heard me. You are to kill Juan Santos, an extremist quirkist who has snuck into Japan and plans to blow a hospital up to promote his views onto our nation. Clear. Izuku. But I've never, President, killed. Well, like I said, you will do a lot of firsts while under me. Consider this one of your tamed ones. Now Hawks will show you where the man is located and will make sure you complete the job. Dismissed. And just like that, Izuku was dismissed in a state of shock. He followed Hawks out of the room and then to the air as the hero led him to the target. Soon they arrived on a roof overlooking a liquor shop where a man with 3 other men walked away, all in hoodies, until one pulled his down, revealing a Latin man with long messy hair fixing it before pulling the hood back up. Hawks. That's our guy. Since it's bright out, keep it discreet, but how you go about it is up to you. I'll be watching closely, so no funny business. Izuku didn't respond as he clenched his fist tightly with a conflicting face. Could he do this? Izuku wasn't allowed to think about it long, as in the corner of his eye he saw Hawks holding up his phone with a serious look. Izuku closed his eyes in conflict before opening them and disappearing in a blur. Izuku appeared the next moment in the alley holding the target by the throat. The man tried to struggle as Izuku held him up in the air with one hand. Brown eyes of panic and fear stared back into green eyes of reluctance and fear. Until finally a loud snap echoed throughout the aisle. Izuku flinched at the sound and dropped the corpse, backing away from it with wide eyes. Hawks landed down not far and inspected the body. Once satisfied, he fired a quick text to someone. Hawks. Good job. Excellent and efficient. You can return to Ua now, and you are done for the day. I'll take care of this. Hawks glanced back and saw Izuku standing completely still, eyes locked onto the corpse. Hawks sighed as he got in front of Izuku, blocking his view of it, making Izuku look at the older hero. Hawks. Just some advice from one sucker to another. Next time make it quicker, it makes it less personal and easier to sleep at night. Take care, Izuku. Hawks used his feathers to wrap the body and took off with it, leaving a still frozen Izuku. Izuku then came back to reality, collapsing to his knees and vomiting his breakfast. He began to hyperventilate as he stared at his hands with them shaking uncontrollably. Izuku clenched his fists hard, causing him to tear through the gloves, opening up his hands, letting the blood leak to the floor, but getting him grounded back into reality. He then took off back towards Ua. Bang. The occupants of the 1B dorms looked up from their tasks, seeing Izuku had slammed the door open. He quickly slammed it behind him and made his way through the commons. Tetsu. Ah, Midoriya, how was your patrol? Izuku ignored his classmate and went straight up the stairs, making them all look at each other, before Kendo nodded as she pulled out her phone and began to call someone. Izuku slammed his door shut as he made his way to his bathroom and began rubbing soap on his hands, trying to wash it off. He was so preoccupied that he didn't even hear his door open. Izuku continued to rub furiously until a hand grabbed his wrist, making him turn to see a panicked Ochako. Ochako. I was calling your name. What are you doing? Izuku. Ochako. I was. Ochako. My god, your hands are raw and they're bleeding. Come here. Ochako made him sit on the toilet, pulled out a med kit from under the sink and quickly began wrapping his hands up with medicine. Izuku stared at her as she desperately tried to wrap his hands with a panicked and worried expression. Ochako felt something wet hit the top of her head, making her look up, seeing tears fall down Izuku's face with him looking completely neutral and defeated. Ochako. Izuku. I killed a man. Ochako flinched as her eyes widened until a sorrowful look crossed her face. She finished wrapping his hands and led him to his bed, laying him down. Izuku just laid on his back staring at the ceiling. Ochako quickly started making some calls and soon sat on the edge of the bed, calmly patting his head with care. Until the door opened, showing Najire, Mei, and Momo, who all quickly came over once Ochako texted that it was an emergency. For the rest of the day, the girls stayed at Izuku's side until he was able to at least function. Ochako never told them what had happened. Cats. Izuku softly petted a Siamese cat as he stared out a window, watching the rain pitter-patter on the street. It had been a week since he killed that man. The girls were able to ground him in reality, but not long after the president sent him out again to repeat the deed. She did that every day until finally Izuku no longer felt anything when he did it, her goal the entire time. To prepare him for an upcoming mission. However, Izuku couldn't think about that at the moment. Currently he was waiting for his date to show up. Izuku was knocked out of his thoughts by the door opening, showing a woman closing an umbrella, revealing Mandalay, his date. The newest woman that wanted to join his harem. Still felt weird saying that. He of course tried to convince her to reconsider, but she wasn't hearing any of it and said she was too old to avoid a chance like this. Mandalay spotted Izuku and waved as he made her way to him and sat across from him in the booth. Izuku. So, a cat cafe. Mandalay. What can I say? I think I'm a cat person. The two chuckled at the joke as the waiter quickly got Mandalay's order before departing. A Persian cat lay on her lap, and she smiled as she gently caressed its head. Mandalay. So, how have you been? Izuku hesitated for a second. Izuku. Sigh, I could be better, but let's say this is a good distraction from what's been happening lately. Mandalay. Well, I'm glad I could be of some help. So, how about we focus on this date then? Izuku. I'd like that. The two had a long date going into the night, talking about many things and just overall getting to know each other. It wasn't anything extravagant, nor was it too simple, it was just a normal date. By the end of it, Mandalay had confirmed that she was interested in taking this further, ending with a kiss as he dropped her off at her house. Izuku stood in front of the president once more, this time her attention fully on him. She had called him in unexpectedly, making Izuku worry that he was to end someone else once more. He wasn't too far off the mark. President. This is an S-class mission you will be receiving, and all your missions beforehand were just warm-ups for your mind to complete this. Since you will have no backup and no second chances, you will leave in exactly 1 week from now after this briefing. Izuku. Just get on with it. The president clicked a button showing a map and picture of I Island, making Izuku raise his eyebrow. President. Approximately 6 months ago, around the time you were severely injured by muscular. We lost contact with an I Island. At first we didn't think much of it until it remained dark for well over a month. We were going to send All Might to check it out, but then All for One happened, so it got postponed again. After the dust settled, we sent some of our agents to check out the situation. They didn't come back, but we were able to get some information. The president clicked it again, showing a man with a metal mask. President. The situation is that a villain by the name of Wolfram has taken complete control over the island, holding its occupants hostage as a pseudo-dictator. Due to a device similar to a crown on his head that boosts his quirk to absurd capabilities, his quirk being metal manipulation. Your mission will be to liberate I Island by any means necessary. Questions. Izuku. Number. President. Good. You are dismissed. I won't see you before you leave, but if it means anything, good luck. Izuku. It doesn't. Izuku turned and left the office. He had preparations to do. Narrator Pav. Izuku sat in the back of a cargo plane in a dark version of his suit. He had his eyes closed as he leaned back, resting his head on the cargo wall. He was heading towards I Island, and so far it had been about 10 hours or so since he left the airport. He unfortunately couldn't tell the girls where he was going exactly, but he did say it was a mission. Ochako gave him a worried look but was able to convince her he was in control this time. The mission was pretty simple but at the same time extremely dangerous. The main objective is to liberate I Island, of course. However, they gave him a few side objectives along with it, though they were optional in completion. 1. Bring the device Wolfram is using into custody. Destruction of the device is okay. 2. Discover the status of David's shield. Simple enough. While lost in his thoughts, a red alarm started to go off, making Izuku stand up and begin to stretch out. Pilot. ETA in 30 seconds. Opening bay doors. Prepare for halo jump. A loud alarm blared as the bay doors opened, letting out a lot of hair. Izuku fixed his messy hair and stood at the edge of the ramp. He looked down and all he saw was a sea of white, the heads of mountain loads of clouds. With the full moon, the only source of light, coloring the clouds in a pearly white. Pilot. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, jump. Izuku leapt out of the plane in a nosedive, piercing the blanket of clouds with the wet water hitting his face like pin needles, until he pierced through the veil, revealing a dark sea with a singular spot of light, I Island. Izuku rocketed down even faster, breaking the sound barrier with ease as he aimed for a fairly dark portion of the island. As he got closer, he slowed down to avoid detection from any security. However, as he glided through the shadows of the city, his face grew grim. It looked like utter chaos had swept through the once prosperous island. Whole buildings were in ruins with red stains all over the streets, which didn't take long for Izuku to guess from what. The dozens of bots that were roaming the streets were most likely the security that was taken over. He didn't see anything that showed evidence of civilians or heroes still being alive. However, it was still night. Izuku was erupted from his thoughts by a loud explosion, making him turn around to see a pillar of black smoke. He slipped through the shadows and alleys until he got a vantage point over the epicenter of the explosion. He saw a group of people destroying a group of bots with spears and other crude materials before disappearing into the sewers the moment before a group of armed men and robots arrived. Izuku. A planned attack. Well, there are survivors at least, which means there is most likely a smart leader. Let's follow. Izuku found another manhole cover and jumped down, slowly following a path left by the survivors. He eventually found a central network that connected all the tunnels into one large area. In the center were several tents and small buildings with at least 100 or so people walking around discussing, including the group that just attacked some of the robots. Izuku hopped down, shifting the ground as he landed, getting all their attention immediately. He sensed the fear and confusion of all coming from them. They couldn't even raise their weapons as they seemed to have given up, but Izuku just smiled at them with a kind smile. "Izuku, can I please speak to your leader? I need to know the situation to handle this as fast as possible." An older girl walked forward, making Izuku look at her with an appraising look. She had blonde hair that was very crudely cut short and barely looked blonde anymore from all the dirt. She was wearing a sleeveless jacket with black jeans, her arm full of scars, some burn marks, others cuts. A large scar ran through her left eye vertically, showing the eye was long gone. "I'm in charge. Who are you and what do you want?" "Izuku. Straight to the point. I like it. I'm the pro hero." Izuku, sent by the Safety Commission to investigate why I Island went dark. "And now that I've confirmed that it's been overrun by villains, I'll handle the rest." The young woman looked at him with doubt until her eyes widened as his smiling face overlapped with her uncle. A large man with the brightest smile that you'd ever see, a smile that showed everything would be all right. Tears silently rolled down her one good eye, making the sapphire-like eye glaze with emotion. Izuku smiled at the girl as she broke down before speaking to her. "Izuku. What's your name?" "Melissa." Melissa Shield." Izuku's eyes widened before narrowing a little. "Izuku. Miss Shield, can you tell me where David Shield is? If you are comfortable, of course." Melissa just looked at Izuku with intense sadness, making Izuku's face morph into understanding. "Izuku. I see. I'm sorry for bringing such a sore subject up. Leave the rest to me, you'll know when it's okay to come out." Izuku began to fly up and emerged back on the streets. Izuku took a deep breath as green electricity began to crackle off him violently as it tore into the pavement. He fell into a runner's stance as his eyeglasses marked every electronic on the surface along with every heartbeat. He says 2 minutes max to clear out the city. Then he was gone with a roar of thunder as a green light streaked throughout the city. Robots that were patrolling the streets evaporated into debris in milliseconds after a green light passed them. Any men in villainous-looking armor or carrying weapons were also instantly caved into the floor or nearby walls, either broken or worse. The green light then shattered through a building, destroying every bot in sight until it reached a control room, making it explode as it ran through it. Eventually, the green light came to a stop in front of a tower, showing Izuku with a smirk as green electricity continued to bounce off him. "Izuku. 1 minute flat, so that's the full capabilities of 50%. Izuku's face grew serious once more as he went into the building and made it all the way to the top of the tower in an instant, stopping in front of a large door. He tore the door down, finding a man sitting in the large room by himself, sitting atop a tall structure similar to a throne. The rest of the room was also a darker tone similar to black, making Izuku narrow his eyes on the villain. The villain wore an iron mask with red hair flowing behind it, but Izuku's eyes rested solely on the tech crown on the villain's head. "Wolfram. So you're the hero that took out all my fodder. Wasn't expecting a brat to be so dumb to attack my domain. Don't you know I'm a god with this crown? Nothing can touch me as long as I'm on this very earth." "Izuku. This very earth, huh?" Izuku took a step and in a blink was next to Wolfram, yanking the crown right off, making the villain's eyes widen as his throne fell apart, showing his quirk wasn't too strong. Wolfram tried to swing at Izuku, but Izuku's fist plunged right into his stomach, causing him to vomit a pool of his blood as almost all his internal organs were damaged. Izuku backed off, looking down on the injured man before stepping back, and in a blink was back at the door, closing it shut behind him. Wolfram lay there panting, confused about why Izuku let him live, until the room started shaking, putting the fear of God in the wannabe god. Outside the tower floated Izuku as black whip tendrils dug into the top of the tower like claws as green electricity crackled off Izuku. Once again he took a deep breath and yelled as he began pulling the top of the tower away from the rest of it. With one final yank, the top came off and Izuku stared down at it before yelling one more time as he threw it into the ocean, where the mostly iron fortress quickly sunk to the bottom. Izuku floated in the sky, watching the water settle before laying his eyes on the crown in his hand. It shattered into a million pieces in Izuku's hand as he clenched it tight. Now the mission was accomplished. Izuku arrived back home 2 days later as he helped with the extraction of the survivors of I Island. Izuku opened the door of the 1B dorms to all of them, looking at him with pride and happiness since they saw the news. However, Izuku raised his eyebrows as all of them didn't really move towards him, and he saw some of his girlfriends in the crowd too, all giving him smug looks. Until Kendo stepped forward with an awkward expression. Kendo confessed to Izuku, saying she would like to give it a chance. Izuku just smiled as he said sure, resulting in Kendo tackling him into a hug, making him chuckle as he barely moved an inch. Well, it's not like anything could go wrong with this date, though he wasn't too certain about what she liked since most of their talks were idle. Well, he'll get to that later. Power. Izuku grimaced seeing Mirio land a devastating blow into Tetsu's stomach, making the manly steel man fall to his knees and vomit. Behind the posing Mirio were both Class 1A and 1B holding their stomachs as Mirio easily ran through them. Izuku was on the sidelines next to Tamaki, Najire, Bakugo, Shoto, Vlad King, and Aizawa. Najire stood by his side, resting her head on his shoulder with a smile, while Izuku held a worried expression, seeing some of his girlfriends and friends on the floor in pain. Izuku, I know why these two are watching, but why am I here again? It really ain't that fun watching them get slaughtered out there. Vlad King. Simple, Midoriya. It would be unfair if you joined them, plus they need to understand what the difference experience can make in their skill and power, which is why you are now going to fight all three of the big three at once. To show them how experience could bring you up higher. Izuku. Any handicaps for me? Vlad King. 45% max and only 2 of your little quirks, or whatever you called them. Izuku. I call them advancements, evolutions from pushing my quirk to its limit. Vlad King. Yeah, whatever. Are you ready? Izuku. Yeah, let's get this over with. The students were taken off the floor, allowing Izuku and the big three to face each other, now all in their hero outfits for a better situation. Mirio was stretching with a large smile, Tamaki was sulking in the back, and Najire just blew Izuku a kiss. Izuku was just starting to stretch out with his classmates cheering him on to avenge them. Vlad King smiled at how close the two classes had become, but frowned when he saw the annoyed look Aizawa had while staring at Izuku. Vlad King. What's your problem with Midoriya? It's not a recent thing either, you've been on his ass even before he joined the hero course. Aizawa didn't answer at first as he kept his eyes on Izuku before sighing. Aizawa. I thought at first he was too irrational and just a stuck-up kid who took their overpowered quirk for granted. Which is why I denied his initial entry into the hero course. I wasn't going to waste my time. However, I learned that instead of that little story in my head was wrong. His quirk was so powerful that it took years to manifest, and when it did, it almost destroyed his body. Also, unfortunately, due to that, he went to extreme measures to try and catch up to his peers, through illegal activities. And now he's a slave due to these drastic measures. I'm not annoyed with him for what he did, I'm annoyed that due to my irrational actions this child has to go through that. Vlad King. God, you are such a softie. Okay, y'all can begin. Izuku. God. Izuku immediately ducked to the left as a spear of yellow energy barely missed his head. Najire scoffed as she began to fly in the air while charging another attack. Izuku didn't see Mirio anywhere, causing him to assume he had gone underground. Tamaki released a barrage of octopus tentacles, making Izuku form a black katana from his black whip. Compared to his early creations, it was much more refined. Mirio popped up the moment Izuku finished slicing the tentacles and went for a punch at Izuku's head. Izuku brought the blade up to block, which Mirio's fist went through and manifested into Izuku's cheek for a clean hook, but at the same time, Izuku landed a kick in his stomach. The two separated, with Mirio landing next to Tamaki and Najire while Izuku landed across from them. The classes were stunned as in a span of 10 seconds so much had happened, and not only was Izuku still standing against them, but he was also able to land a hit on Mirio unlike them. Mirio. He's good. Only after watching me fight once he was able to figure out a countermethod. Well, time to rack it up a notch. Formation B. Najire and Tamaki. Hi. Mirio fell into the ground once again while Tamaki formed his two arms into praying mantis arms, and his feet turned into chicken feet, making him reach Izuku in seconds. While Najire floated around, just watching, waiting for a moment. Izuku. Ew. Does he eat bugs? Well, at least I know the extent of his abilities now. Izuku blocked several of Tamaki's swings and his danger sense went off, making him turn to see Mirio emerging from the ground and aiming to punch Izuku in the face. Izuku went to slash at Mirio, but he went through him, but Mirio never materialized, making him fall through the floor and resulting in Izuku getting blasted in the back by Najire's wave, followed by Tamaki batting him with a clam hand. Izuku was knocked into the ground, allowing Najire to shoot another wave, hitting him dead on and causing a wave of dust to fill the air. Everyone thought it was over until the smoke expanded out to unnecessary levels. Najire. Damn, he used his quirk to create more dust. Watch out, you two. Najire was interrupted by a black tendril wrapping her waist and yanking her into the smoke. Najire came face to face with Izuku, who looked at her with a smirk. Najire's face exploded red. Izuku. Down. Najire. Okay, is this my kink? Izuku then rushed out of the smoke, bulldozing over Tamaki, knocking the poor boy unconscious. Izuku then slammed his foot on the ground, cracking it open, revealing Mirio in the floor, who deactivated his quirk due to shock, allowing Izuku to dropkick him in the stomach, knocking the third year back. And just like that, Izuku won the fight, not just due to his overwhelming power but his experience that gave him the ability to find a way to win. Aizawa. Most of you all have strong and powerful quirks and some of you don't. Unfortunately, that's the cruelty of reality. However, that is not an excuse to stay weak. Even the most powerful die one day. That's what experience is for. It gives the weak the opportunity to stand amongst the strong and the strong a chance to live long. Never forget that, classes. Hi. Izuku smirked at the speech before turning back to the downed Mirio, offering him a hand. Mirio smiled brightly as he accepted the hand up. Bakugo watched from the sidelines and clenched his fist, making it begin to bleed as he glared daggers at Izuku. Mirio. Yep, I definitely need to introduce you to Sir Izuku. Narrator Pav. * 1 week since last chapter. Something's off. Izuku could feel it in the air, and it had something to do with Bakugo. Ever since the Kamino incident he had been awfully quiet. Yet Izuku knew it was a matter of time before he exploded, and eventually, it came. Izuku was working on some homework in the commons, one of the few things he was still forced to do even though he was a pro hero at this point. That's when Bakugo walked up to him, causing Izuku to raise an eyebrow since he didn't know how he got into the 1B dorms. Bakugo. Meet me at City Gamma. We are gonna talk one last time. Bakugo didn't repeat himself and made his way out of the dorm. However, what he didn't expect was Izuku to follow him right away. Not knowing Izuku was on board as soon as he said this was the last time, the sooner Bakugo was finally out of his life the better. He doesn't remember when he started to hate Bakugo more than admire him. Maybe it was when he finally got positive support around him, or maybe it was when he decided he would no longer be weak, but he knows now that he truly hates Bakugo. Soon they arrived at the fake city with them both standing away from each other. Izuku. Now what do you want, Bakugo? Bakugo didn't respond right away, instead just staring off into the distance before turning to Izuku with a frown, before speaking in a somber tone. Bakugo. Ever since that night the fall of All Might has been playing in my mind every day, every class, and every night on constant repeat. Him struggling to stop that monster, the pinnacle of strength that I vowed to surpass, failing. Yet right by his side was you, trying your hardest to contend among those titans, and where was I? Hiding with the others with my tail between my legs. The reason I wanted to talk with you for one reason. Fight me, show me why All Might chose you as his successor. Izuku stared at him with an annoyed look before speaking with clear distaste. Izuku. Even though I would love to kick your ass, I will decline. I don't owe you anything, Bakugo. Izuku turned to walk away, making Bakugo growl, clenching his fists in anger. He lunged at Izuku, resulting in Izuku sidestepping the explosion and countering with a punch to Bakugo's face, launching him back. Bakugo recovered midair and released a wave of AP shots that Izuku weaved through. Bakugo raised his arms over his head, getting ready to block another punch, but Izuku punched his stomach instead, crashing him to the ground. Izuku. I don't know what you thought would happen, Bakugo. You know I'm stronger than you. I know that probably hurts your fragile little ego, but I'm no longer that little quirkless kid you can take your anger out on. I'm better. Bakugo coughed from his crater on the floor but just looked to the sky with a sad look. Bakugo. I know, Dek. Midoriya, why did I have to be the one to end All Might? Why did I have to be so weak to get caught by some stupid villains? Now, even the guy that I bullied for so long is stronger than me, yet I'm not angry about it. If anything, I'm just frustrated that this is my fate. Izuku's hateful look softened, yet Bakugo continued on. Bakugo. Where did I go wrong, Midoriya? When did I become this piece of shit? When did I lose you as my only true friend? Izuku looked stunned for a second before he answered honestly. Izuku. We were never really friends, Bakugo. You were always like this, whether that's the nature you were born with or it was nurtured by this shitty society. That I can't tell you. Bakugo. I see. The silence was tense in the air as Izuku glared down at the motionless Bakugo until Bakugo said something that shattered Izuku's world. Bakugo. I'm sorry. Izuku didn't say anything, not even when he walked away to return to his room. This will be the last time Izuku and Bakugo talk to each other. The rest of the month was a bit of a blur to Izuku. It was like that conversation with Bakugo had drained everything from him. Bakugo after that never even looked in his direction and instead seemed to be trying to become better not only as a hero but also as a person. Izuku didn't know what to feel about it, so he decided to not think about it at all, and instead moved on. His hate was still there for him, but now instead of a burning fire, it was just a smoldering fire. He just didn't care anymore, and now it was time to move on. So, he did. He took all his girlfriends on dates to try and clear his head. He didn't need any more stress. The safety Kamizen was already taking enough of his sanity, and he didn't need Bakugo to be doing the same. He took Ochako to an aquarium as she had been wanting to see the seal exhibit which allowed you to pet the mammal. Kendo wanted to have a workout session together which Izuku found relaxing. You just wanted a nice candlelight dinner. Momo wanted Izuku to meet her parents, which was terrifying. Mei just made him a test subject for one of her experiments. Nejire just wanted to have a nice scenic walk in the park. And finally Mandalay also just wanted a nice dinner. So, that helped with Izuku's psyche. Unfortunately, he had to return to work one day. Izuku walked into Night Eye's agency for the 5th time this month. He still remembered his first meeting with the sidekick. Extremely tense and annoying as the sidekick had tried to tell him he wasn't worthy of OFA, Izuku shut him up by putting him through a wall. The second meeting was more professional after a week of recovery had passed for Night Eye. The case was pretty straightforward: take down some Yakuza group that was trying to take advantage of All Might's absence. It was getting kind of serious since they developed quirk-dampening bullets. Yet, the summon he got today said there was a serious development that would push the raid up. Izuku entered the conference room filled with several heroes, some high-ranking, others just well-known. He waved to Ochako and Nejire, who were sitting at a separate table behind Ryaku, who they were studying under. Izuku sat in between Rock Lock and Fat Gum, which signaled the meeting to start. Rock Lock glanced at Izuku before frowning as he turned to the standing Night Eye next to a projector. Night Eye. Good, everyone was able to make it. Now let's begin this emergency meeting. Fat Gum. If you don't mind me asking. Why is this an emergency? We just had a meeting 2 days ago. Night Eye. It's an emergency because of something that was discovered yesterday due to Lemillion. We may have found the reason for how Overhaul is developing these quirk-erasing bullets. Night Eye pressed down on a clicker, causing an image to show a small girl with white hair being escorted by Overhaul into the estate. All the heroes minus the ones that already knew dreaded to hear what Night Eye had to say. Night Eye took a deep breath before he started. Night Eye. Yesterday, while on patrol, Lemillion made contact with this little girl, who as he stated was extremely afraid and clung to his leg for dear life, shaking. As he went to comfort the girl, Overhaul appeared stating he was the girl's father, but Lemillion noted she began to shake uncontrollably. Once Overhaul threatened Lemillion, the girl who was stated to be named Eri returned to his side at once. Due to the bandages on the girl and the hair evidence Lemillion obtained from the girl, Overhaul is using the girl to create the bullets. Slam. Everyone turned to the noise, seeing Izuku had slammed his fist onto the table with clear anger in his eyes. Izuku. And you let her just go. Night Eye. Izuku. Calm down. You of all people should know that if we tried to bring him right then and there, no charges would stick. Plus with his quirk the amount of damage he could cause in the 2 minutes it would take for backup to arrive is unimaginable. Lemillion is already beating himself enough as it is, we don't need more arguments about what if. Izuku glanced at Mirio seeing him looking down with a depressed look. Izuku sighed as he leaned back in his chair. Night Eye. Our top priority now is the safe rescue of this girl and secondary is the arrest of all the Yakuza. Is this new objective clear? Speak if it doesn't. Rock Lock. I have one issue but it has nothing to do with the case. Should we really have kids involved in a situation like this? It just doesn't feel right to me. Izuku tuned out the rest of the meeting as he stared at his fist indent in the metal. He understood the situation and knew that he couldn't blame Mirio but it still angered him. Izuku let it go though he needed to stay focused on the mission. Izuku's phone buzzed making him glance down at the unknown number that sent him a text. Retrieve the quirk erasing bullets and its research. Narrator Pav. The day of the raid. Izuku sat on the edge of a rooftop looking over the squadrons of police and heroes standing outside the compound getting ready to breach in. The reason why he was watching from afar was because he was the cavalry in case things went wrong. He was way too strong and could cause unnecessary damage and injuries. Or that's what Night Eye said at least, which was slightly fair. Still pissed off Najire and Ochako, also oddly Yukio but he was able to calm them down. Anyways he needed to focus the raid was about to start. Bang. And of course, it had to start with a bang as the front door busted open revealing a very tall muscular man that looked like he ate roids for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Along with him were several groups of men who began opening fire on the heroes and police with the large man laughing loudly. Izuku saw the vanguard squad slip in while Yukio tried to wrestle with the large man but she seemed tired already. Izuku. Probably his quirk. Well, I'm stepping in. Lightning crackled around Izuku as he went to 20% and jumped off the building. In a boom that made the wind roar with rage causing the people there to cover their eyes. Once the wind died down and they could see again, all they could do was feel shock as Izuku stood in the middle of all the men. Who were now unconscious in craters in the ground with the large man in the side of a building. Izuku. Well that takes care of those guys. Are you two okay? Izuku asked his two lovers as he offered them his hands as his wind knocked them over. They both smiled as they accepted his hand up. Yukio growled in a huff making Najire glance at her before smirking which is something the sensei noticed making her look away in embarrassment. Okacho. We got it from here Izuku. Help the others. Izuku. No need to tell me twice. Stay safe. Izuku ran into the building and began looking for the others, meaning he got lost in the first 3 seconds. So, Izuku got to just walking around looking through each of the rooms trying to find anything incriminating which he did a couple of times, and hid them away in his pockets. As he was walking down a hall, his danger sense went off making him lean back as a hand barely missed his face. Izuku scoffed as he countered with a slight kick to the attacker's stomach but still launched them down the hall into a group of people. Izuku scoffed seeing the League of Villains look at him with hate. The attacker known as Shigi coughed up some blood as Spinner helped him up. Izuku glared at them making them all be on guard as he scanned them. He noticed the masked one that took Bakugo now had a metal arm and the big burly one was no longer with them. He already knew the smoky one was in custody so this was it. Izuku. It was true that you were working with the Yakuza though it seems it wasn't that strong of an alliance. Where's the drag? Toga growled at the insult along with tears starting to form on her eyes. Izuku. Ah, I see well that explains the metal arm as well. I guess it's too late to ask you to surrender. Dabi responded by launching a wave of blue flames at Izuku. Dabi. Like hell, we will brat. Dabi's smirk disappeared as Izuku negated his flames with a simple finger flick. Izuku sighed as he guessed this was the best chance to ask his question. Izuku. It's going to take more than that Patches. Well since I got you here I might as well ask something that's been on my mind. Why continue when you're so wrong? Izuku. I mean why keep on fighting for a path that will just lead to destruction and tragedy? And I mean for not just civilians and heroes. So, I'm wondering what makes you guys keep going, why are you even doing this? Shigi just grew a condescending smile as he glared at Izuku. Shigi. Oh. Is the little hero trying to understand us? Trying to save us? Going to tell us everything is alright and we didn't know better? Izuku glared with no emotion as the villains chuckled. It stopped with Izuku's next words. Izuku. Who says you deserve to be saved? That stunned the villains as that's not what they were expecting. Izuku. Don't get me wrong, some of you have had pretty fucked up lives and this may have been the only life for you. That is sad and pitiful, but it doesn't excuse you from morals or justice nor all the harm you have caused to innocent people. I've been looking into all of your pasts, but I see nothing but people who are pure evil or just gave up. That's why this is my last and only offer, turn yourself in or I will kill you. Shiggy growled as he glared at Izuku, who just stared at the villain with contempt. Shiggy. A hypocrite like the rest of those fakes. You or a. Izuku. Oh wah wah wah. Shut the fuck up already. You all are just a bunch of fucking babies, who bitch and moan every time sometimes doesn't go your way. Making shit up like, you can't do that or I'm allowed to do this because I'm, got a bunch of children. I will do what I have to, and if it means killing you all, then I will. Toga. What would you know about us anyway? Izuku. More than you know, after looking at you a lot. I wonder more and more every day what is the difference between a hero and a villain. Do you know the answer? None of them could answer. Izuku. I see. A web of black tendrils escaped from Izuku's outstretched hand, encasing all of them in it with their hands behind their back. Izuku. Fifth, black whip, black web. Shiggy tried to reach for the tendril. Izuku. I wouldn't do that, handy. Your comrades there would die way before the decay reaches me, and then I would just kill you anyway. However, the whole room shifted like a painting, making Izuku curse as his tendril was dismantled by a wall forming in front of him. He looked around and saw he was now in a box kind of setting. If he remembered correctly, this was one of the bullet's abilities. Izuku sighed, knowing that the love got away, but they weren't the priority at the moment. Izuku punched forward, shattering the wall open and revealing Sunniator struggling against two crazy guys. Izuku intervened, knocking both the villains out at the same moment, and Sunniator collapsed unconscious. He tended to his wounds before moving on to the next signal on his map. Izuku fell through a floor, finding Fatgum dealing blows to a muscular guy while Kirishima was unconscious on the floor. He also noted the other masked guy watching from a distance. Izuku sped towards the backline, one shoulder checking him into a wall and knocking him out instantly. This distracted the muscular one, allowing Fatgum to land a powerful blow across his jaw, knocking them out. Fatgum gave Izuku a thumbs up before passing out. Izuku smiled as he secured the villains and then treated the two heroes quickly before going on his way again. Izuku ran through the distorted hallways, going to where he heard loud fighting. He kicked down a wall, finding Overhaul laughing as he sent a wave of spikes towards a bleeding Lemillion as he put his back towards them, embracing Eri at the same time. Izuku rushed in, standing in front of the two and punching towards the wave, destroying it with air pressure. Lemillion looked back with a smile as Izuku stood in front of them protectively. Eri looked up at the hero with awe. Izuku. So, you're Overhaul. You're a lot uglier in person. Overhaul. Die. Overhaul sent another wave at the three, which Izuku destroyed with a flick of his fingers. Izuku spoke while keeping his eyes on Overhaul. Izuku. Lemillion. Take Eri out of here. I'll handle this. Lemillion nodded as he shakingly got up and began walking away with Eri in tow. Then it was just Overhaul and Izuku left. Narrator Pav. Die. Shrieked Overhaul as he slammed his hand on the ground, sending a wave of earth spikes at Izuku. Izuku sighed as he powered up to 20%, easily weaving through the spikes and shattering any that got too close to his lichen. Overhaul was completely enraged. These damn heroes were ruining everything, and all his hard work couldn't be stopped due to some brat. Izuku pierced through a spike, staring down at the villain with hate, and for the first time in his life, Overhaul felt regret. One of his lackeys fired a shot at Izuku, but the hero dodged with ease even in midair, and reappeared next to the lackey, delivering a devastating punch to his stomach and making the villain crumble in on himself as he fell unconscious. Izuku glanced back to Overhaul, making the villain take an instinctual step back before growling as he made another wave of spikes. Izuku this time didn't entertain the attack as he slapped the attack into nothingness with a wave of his hand, stunning Overhaul. Izuku. Why did you do all those horrible things to Eri? I saw the runes, so don't bother denying it. Overhaul. Eri is a cursed child who killed her father the moment her quirk activated. Due to that, I will use that cursed power to rid the world of the disease known as quirks, and that dream will come true once I kill you. Izuku. And you can keep on dreaming that dream while you lay in your cell. I assume you also intend to keep your quirk. Overhaul growled as he launched another wave of spikes. Izuku. Well, that answers that. Izuku rushed through the spikes with ease, shattering them with just his movement of him moving, and in the second after Overhaul was buried in the ground. Izuku straddled the villain and began to lay in on the villain with anger beginning to cloud his mind. For the past nights, Izuku lay restless as he thought of all the things that this bastard did to Eri, and now that he had the bastard who wanted him, Izuku just couldn't stop himself. So, he belted Overhaul with punch after punch into the ground with anger fuming his soul. Izuku cracked one final one across Overhaul's face and pulled his arm back, reactivating his quirk to end the bastard. Night Eye. Stop. Izuku whirled around seeing Night Eye had arrived, seeming to be chasing Eri, who had come back most likely in fear. Yet, Night Eye seemed to be talking more to Izuku than Eri. That 1 second of hesitation was all the villain needed. Izuku's danger sense warned him, but he wasn't fast enough to completely avoid the grab. A singular finger grazed Izuku's right arm as he leapt back. Izuku cried out in pain as his arm morphed and disfigured before exploding into a bloody mist. He collapsed to his knees with a growl as he put his remaining hand on the stump in a futile attempt to slow the bleeding. His arm was gone all the way to his shoulder. Night Eye gasped in shock and seemed he was about to yell an apology or something similar until a spike pierced through his stomach, making the little girl yelp in fear. Now 2 of the people who were trying to save her were severely injured. She froze when she saw Overhaul stand up, spitting out a tooth with his face a bloody mess. Overhaul. Eri, get back here right now before I get angrier. Your punishment is already going to be bad, don't make it worse. Eri flinched at the threat and began to run towards Overhaul until a black tendril wrapped around her waist and dragged her to its origin. With a thud, Eri was against her hero's chest as he heavily panted, already feeling the effects of blood loss. Yet, he still won't give up even if he was down an arm. To stop him you would have to kill him. Izuku put his remaining hand on Eri's head, caressing it with a gentle touch, which was foreign to the small girl. Izuku. I won't let you take her. She will never suffer again as long as I am alive. She is not a curse, nor is she an object for anyone's use. She is just a little girl that doesn't deserve any of this, and I am the hero that will save her. Eri stared at him with wide eyes as tears slowly began to fall down her face. Overhaul just scoffed as he leaned down to touch the floor, until the roof caved in, showing Yukio in her dragon form pushing the giant bullet through the floor before crashing to the floor, kicking up dust into the air. Izuku brought Eri closer to him as he jumped back to avoid some of the floor caving in. Following close behind were Uravity and Najire as they followed their sensei. However, both girls' eyes widened in shock and horror as they saw the severely injured Izuku holding the child close. Najire, Ochako. Izuku. Before they could even get near Izuku, the giant exploded into red mist, showing Overhaul did it along with the other guy and began forming a new mass. Izuku narrowed his eyes as he stood up before falling down to one knee due to being lightheaded, but tried again anyway. Eri. Why are you trying so hard? Izuku. Because if I don't, who will? Eri broke down at that, and to Izuku's surprise her horn began to glow as a golden aura consumed him, and then he felt better. He patted her head making her stop, but she looked up seeing it was Izuku's right hand petting her. Izuku smiled at the little girl, making a warmth erupt in her heart. Izuku. Like I said, Eri, you are not a cursed child. If you were, how could restore something that only an angel could do? Now do me a favor, hide behind that rock, it won't take long to handle this. Eri obliged, allowing Izuku to stand up now without issue and began to flex and stretch his restored arm. He truly was thankful for the child's blessing. Without this would be way more of a headache. Izuku stared forward, looking at the abomination Overhaul had become, so he made a snip at the villain. Izuku. Damn, so you can get uglier. Overhaul. Die. Overhaul reached for the ground with his oversized hand, but a loud boom echoed throughout the cavern and kicked wind and dust into the air, blinding everyone. Once the wind calmed down and the remaining heroes looked at what happened, all they saw was Izuku standing where Overhaul was and looking into the sky with his hand over his eyes to block the sun. Izuku had kicked Overhaul through the hole and miles into the sky in seconds. Izuku turned to the remaining heroes around. Izuku. Protect Eri and check on Night Eye and Lemillion. I won't be long. Izuku powered up to 100%, making him glow a dark green as his lightning tore into the ground like paper. His skin took a pinkish tone from the power and his hair spiked up slightly and became a more cyan color. And then he was gone in a literal blink that caved in the ground and caused another dust storm in the cavern. Overhaul blinked in utter shock as pain tore through his mangled new body, forcing him to reconstruct himself again. In a roar of thunder, Izuku appeared in front of him in the sky with clear anger and pulled his fist back. To this day Overhaul swore he saw 100 glowing fists of green coming towards him. The next moment, like the sound of a chorus, thousands of booms rocked that side of Japan as in an instant Overhaul back on the ground, embedded into the floor still in his monstrous form. At the same moment, the squadron returned to the surface with Nejire holding Eri close while the others carried the injured heroes, just in time to see Overhaul get slammed into the ground by Izuku. Izuku landed in front of them with a smile and reached out his arms towards Nejire, asking for Eri, which the heroine did. Eri clung to Izuku as he cradled her to his chest and brought her towards the downed Overhaul. Izuku, you see this Eri, he can never hurt you again. Not as long as I am alive, but Eri, I want you to do something for me real quick. Eri stared in awe at the defeated form of the man that had hurt her so much. She felt so safe in the hero's arm that she clung tighter. Eri, yes, Izuku, I want you to use your quirk on this man until he turns back to himself. It's so we can put him away for a long time. Can you do that? Eri looked at him in his green eyes and saw a gentle look she wasn't used to and just nodded, but Izuku could tell she was scared to try. Izuku, it's okay, I'll be right here. Just imagine it like a stopwatch. Turn it on for 10 seconds, and then deactivate it as fast and hard as you can. Eri, what's a stopwatch? Izuku, just turn it on. Eri, okay. Eri was put down and she put her hand on a piece of the monster and let her quirk loose. Just 10 seconds later Overhaul and his goons were unfused, plopping to the floor. Eri's quirk however didn't stop and Izuku could tell she was beginning to panic due to that. However, before he could try anything her quirk deactivated instantly, causing her to collapse into a sleep. Izuku turned and saw Aizawa's eyes were red. The hero gave a quick nod before turning back to the cops. Izuku smiled before turning to the sleeping Eri. He picked up her into his arms, cradling her with a smile coming across his face. Immediately afterward Nejire and Ochako hugged him with worry after seeing him literally missing an arm. Izuku just laughed it off as he said everything would be fine. Izuku's smile slightly diminished as the thought of the vial of Eri's blood in his back pocket crossed his mind before a new smile crossed his face. He thinks it got destroyed in his fight after all, and he would know better than anyone about that. Narrator Pav. The doctor took off the cuff that was measuring Izuku's heart rate off of Izuku's restored arm. It's been like this for the past 2 days. The doctors in this dumb hospital made sure Izuku's restored arm was permanent and wouldn't disappear after a short time. After all, Eri's quirk was still unknown, so it was reasonable to think there would be aftereffects or whether or not what she rewinds is permanent. Though Izuku still found it annoying. Doctor. So, are you certain that you feel fine? Izuku. Yes. What do the tests say? Doctor. That you are perfectly healthy. Izuku. Then I guess we are done here. Doctor. Wait, we still don't know if there are any aftereffects. Izuku. And I will come back if there are any, but I need to go or the girls really will kill me. Also, I need to check up on a few people. Izuku didn't give the doctor a chance to stop him as he walked out of the room. He was in some scrubs since his suit was destroyed and no one was allowed to visit him since he was in quarantine, so no backup clothes either. Well, it didn't matter, he only wanted to visit 2 people, used to be 3 people but one passed away not too long into their visit here. He hopes Mirio is alright but he needs to see someone else first. Izuku stopped in front of the private sector of the hospital and easily went through. After a few directions from the staff and guards, Izuku arrived at a hospital room where he quietly entered. It was very dark in the room with no one in sight, but Izuku felt into the area, sensing just one signature hiding in the corner with a blanket. Izuku silently made his way to the corner of the room and crouched down. The figure under the blanket began to shake as it felt the eyes of Izuku on it even through the blanket. Izuku. Hello Eri. The blanket froze as it seemed the person underneath recognized the voice. The blanket slowly uncovered, revealing a red eye peeking out and widening. Seeing Izuku crouched down with a gentle smile towards her. Something she was still confused about it in her heart. Izuku. Hi there. How have you been? I'm sorry I haven't been able to visit you sooner. The doctors were holding me up. Eri stared at him in complete confusion, making Izuku smile as he decided to just sit down and wait for her to respond in her own time. However, he'll fill in the silence while he waits. Izuku. By the way, I have to thank you. She looked confused, making Izuku laugh as he flexed his right arm. Izuku. For bringing back my arm. Trust me, you saved a lot of trouble by bringing that back. Eri. It was an accident. Izuku. And not every accident is bad. Sometimes accidents help you understand yourself better. Eri stared at him before fully taking the blanket off, revealing her nervous face. She stared down at her tiny hands. Eri. I could have killed you. Izuku. Yet, you didn't, instead you saved me. She didn't look convinced. Izuku. Here. Izuku extended his restored arm to her. Izuku. Before you appeared, this was gone. Destroyed into nothingness by that evil man. Yet, when you used it, you restored it to what it was before. Does that sound like a curse? Eri didn't answer. Izuku. That's the funny thing about quirks, they are always misused or misrepresented. It doesn't matter how dangerous they are or how helpful they are. It's up to the person using them that dictate whether they will be a blessing or a curse, whether that be on the user themselves or to the people around them. Now Eri, are you a blessing or a curse? Eri. A curse. Izuku. Wrong. Eri. Huh. Izuku. Eri, it isn't your fault for what happened to your father. Your quirk awakened and no one had any idea what it could do. When people come into this world, they are a blessing. It's what they decided to do once they are here, is what dictates whether they are a curse or a blessing. You didn't mean to kill your father, right? Eri. No, I didn't. Izuku. See, you didn't choose to be a curse, it was an accident. Eri. I hate repeating myself like this, but I want you to understand this. You are not a curse on anyone, you could become one, but that's up to you. Yet to me in this very moment, you're a blessing, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I got to go, but next time I see you, tell me what you think you are. Eri's eyes were filled with awe and wonder as Izuku stood up with a large smile on his face. Yet she didn't want to see him go. Izuku left before she could chase after him. They'll meet again, he was confident in that. Izuku made his way to Mirio's room and opened the door to the older boy sitting on his hospital bed looking out the window. For just a second Izuku saw the sadness in his senpai's eyes but decided not to say anything about it. He sat on the chair next to the bed and waited for Mirio to be ready. Izuku. How are you holding up? Mirio. I should be asking you that, after all you're the one that lost an arm. Izuku. Still a little stiff but brand new. Don't deflect. Seriously, how are you holding up? Mirio sat there for a second before finally tears began to spill from his eyes, as he broke down. Izuku just stood up and put a hand on Mirio's shoulder, allowing his senior to let it all out. Sometimes this was enough for some men. Izuku put his new pair of clothes on and began to walk out of the hospital. Luckily one of the staff got him some new clothes so he could leave. As he made his way through the main lobby, he felt someone tap him on the shoulder, making him turn around with confusion. A woman smiled at him gently, with Izuku's eyes widening seeing the new person. Izuku. Ms. Yukio. What can I help you with? Ryoko. Just Ryoko is fine. I just wanted to talk with you. Izuku. About what? Because last time we talked, you and Maruko tried to take me to a hotel. Ryoko. Yeah, almost forgot about that. It was back in your Vigilante days, correct? Let's just say it's hard for Maruko and I to control ourselves during certain times of the year, especially with strong men. Anyway, that's not what I wanted to talk about. Ryoko blew down her blush. Ryoko. Najire has told me a lot about how your relationships work, and if I'm honest, I'm a little interested. Izuku. Oh, Ryoko. So, would you care for a date? Izuku. Well, if you're okay with this messed up relationship, then sure, I'll give it a shot. Ryoko. Nice, meet me here later. Till then. Ryoko smiled as she left the stunned Izuku. Izuku sighed as he rubbed his hair, at least one thing to look forward to today. First, though he needed to report to the Safety Commission, something he wasn't looking forward to. Izuku glared down at the cell in front of him with Madam President standing right next to him with a neutral glare. Both of them looked down on the imprisoned Overhaul as he tried to break the restraints around his arms. Madam. So, Izuku. What do you think is the appropriate punishment for someone like him? Izuku glared down at the man with pure hate. Izuku. Personally, I would just go down there and kill him myself. Madam glanced at Izuku with a side eye calculating the young man. Madam. And if it weren't personal? Izuku glared down at the man thinking of all the things he probably did to Eri. Izuku. I would rip off his arms from his body. He talks about quirks being a curse but flaunts his around with no problem. If you truly had a problem with quirks, then it shouldn't bother you if they are taken. Madam. So, what's stopping you? It's a justful punishment. Not even a second later, Izuku was on Overhaul, grabbing him by the elbows with black whip. As sounds of flesh tearing followed by screams of pain filled the room, Madam smiled sweetly at the progress her new weapon had shown since Kyoto. It won't be long until he was perfect. Narrator Pav. 3 months later. It was time for the Culture Festival, a yearly event where each class in UA has a chance to show what they are off without it having to be hero-related. A time for the general classes to stand out from the hero classes. Izuku would usually be joining 1B since they were his class but decided against it. Instead, offering to act as security for the event since he didn't want to take away their spotlight. Luckily, Nezu approved his request, which allowed him some freedom. Ever since Kyoto, the Safety Commission had been a little lenient on him, but it still was a struggle with them. Enough about that, let's talk about Izuku's progress with his relationships. A lot has happened with them over these 3 months, so we'll go in order. As you know, Ochako and Izuku were happily engaged, so no changes there besides him getting hit for losing his arm. Now for the actual new updates. Momo was proposed to a little over a month ago, making her the second fiancé. Followed shortly by Mei, Najire, and Yu, who were third, fourth, and fifth fiancé respectively. Kendo, Monodale, and Ryuko were all now dating Izuku at a nice pace. Ryuko officially joined them about 2 months ago after a few successful dates. Nana, on the other hand, it had been almost 7 months since he last heard from her or any of the vestiges. Ever since the AFO fight, and well, he just didn't like to talk about it. He'll admit that it did hurt that they abandoned him so fast, but he knew it would be unhealthy to dwell on it. After all, he needed to focus, for today he was in charge of Eri. Eri was brought to Ua not long after the raid, about a couple of days after he last saw her. She was to be monitored and trained to handle her quirk until she was able to exist in normal society. Originally, she was meant to go under the Safety Commission's protection, but Nezu was able to thankfully stop it. Madam allowed it since she had enough of the girl's blood anyway. It still made him uncomfortable to think about. Eri was put under Aizawa's primary care due to his quirk in being able to handle her outbursts. However, Izuku and Mirio spent a lot of time during class period with her. Since she trusted them the most out of everyone, more Izuku. She wasn't able to answer Izuku's question from before, but he said that was fine. It was for when she knew that answer and when she could tell him without any doubt in her little heart. Due to Mirio losing his quirk, he couldn't participate in a lot of his hero classes, so when he wasn't, he watched over Eri. And since Izuku technically was already a fully fledged hero, he was exempted from many hero classes or just didn't show up to them, so he would watch her during those times. Eri, it seemed, was the closest, with Izuku basically attached to his hip. Momo said it was like a little duck following around a bear that mistook it as their mother. Izuku was a little uncomfortable at being compared to a parent, considering it seemed Eri didn't seem like she saw him as one either. All she could say was that she knew she'd be safe around him. Her quirk training was slow due to her fear of her quirk, but after several sessions with Izuku and Aizawa, she began to be more comfortable due to the knowledge Aizawa could stop her and the comforting feeling of Izuku nearby. It was slow but steady progress for a child who never used their quirk on purpose. However, enough of the past, now let's focus on the present. On the day of the Culture Festival, Izuku was walking the grounds on his security patrol. However, he wasn't alone, as not too far behind him stood Eri as his little shadow. She always did this, never taking Izuku's hand or even touching him, fear of her quirk activating. Instead she would shadow him, always a step or two behind him. Izuku Pav. It was quiet. Well, quiet in security terms. It was pretty loud even on the outskirts of the festival. I glanced back, seeing Eri still following me with a nervous expression, obviously nervous around all the people and noises. A nervous sigh escaped my lips as I stopped in my tracks and turned to the small girl, who froze at the eye contact and quickly looked away. Izuku. I can take you back to the dorm if you want. You don't have to follow me if you're uncomfortable. I spoke a gentle tone, but it seemed Eri was still a little uncomfortable with direct conversation. After all, the most she's ever spoken was their conversation at the hospital, and that was in one-word responses. She still nodded her head no and got a step closer to me. A smile graced my face as I scanned the nearby booths before stopping on one. Izuku. You hungry? How about a candy apple? Eri tilted her head in confusion at that, making my heart squeeze. I calmed myself down and led her to the booth where I quickly bought one for her. I handed her the treat and she looked at it confused, forcing me to buy one to show her what she's supposed to do. The largest smile broke on her face as she quickly devoured her apple. I softly smiled at the girl as I bit into my own. Until a pang went off in my head, making me close my eyes, seeing two red signatures entering the forest. Intruders. Possible, but I need to double check. However, what about Eri? Eri had already finished her apple and was staring greedily at mine, making me sigh as I handed it to her. Wait, that's perfect for this situation. She's marked by danger sense, so if something happens I'll be back in seconds. Izuku. Eri, can you stay right over there on that bench for a few minutes? I need to take care of something. Eri didn't look convinced and was a little scared, probably thought I was gonna abandon her. I quickly tried to alleviate her worries. Izuku. Don't worry, I'll be back, but some bad people seem to have broken into Ua. She began to freak out. Izuku. It's okay, they're nowhere near here or anyone at the moment. However, I need to go before they get in and ruin this for everyone. I need to be everyone's blessing right now, Eri. So, if you sit here until I get back, I'll buy you some more candy apples. Eri. Promise. Izuku. Promise. Eri nodded finally and sat on the bench, this time eating the candy apple slowly compared to before. I ruffled her hair, which she did flinch to at first before accepting it. Well, let's not take too long. Narrator Pav. It didn't take long for Izuku to find the two criminals as they were setting up some cameras. Izuku casually walked up to them, making them jump before the older-looking gentleman put on his arrogant facade. It seemed they didn't recognize him due to the cocky attitude they gave him, or they really were that stupid. Izuku. So, I presume you want to crash the festival because both of your lives were shitty. GC. A little rude assumption there, brat. Izuku. You didn't deny it. LB. Gentle doesn't have to tell you anything. GC. Calm yourself, La Brava. Izuku. Well, it's not like I care too much. After all, I already know both of your stories, Danjiro Tobita and Minami Iba. They both froze from Izuku saying their full names while he had an uncaring face. Izuku. I've been doing research lately on all the villains of old and new, on why they ended up like this. What was the difference between a hero and a villain? Why people with such amazing quirks would forsake them and use them like that? And every time I'm disappointed with the answer. Before the two villains could move, Izuku wrapped them up in black whip and slammed them on the ground hard. Izuku. There's a little girl in there that had a life 100 times worse than both of you combined, but you know what she wants. She wants to be better so she can never hurt anyone again. Yet, you gave up just because no one believed in you. Pathetic. Gentle refused to look up. Well, it's not like he could even if he wanted to. Izuku. You had so much potential, Gentle. Yet, if you hadn't given up, you would have been a great hero. The authorities will be here shortly. They didn't resist once the cops arrived and took them away. He didn't feel bad for them, since from his sources they both had pretty normal upbringings and even had decent lives to the average villain or even person. Yet just because people were a little mean to them, they decided it was okay to take their anger out on the world. That seemed childish. He sighed. That was enough thinking about it. He found Eri where he had left her, just sitting on the bench staring off into space, gnawing on the stick of the candy apple. Izuku smiled as he landed in front of her, making her jump in surprise before jumping off the bench and hugging his leg. He froze, not knowing what to do, until he just rested his hand on her head. "Eri, you came back." Izuku grimaced before sighing. "Izuku, I did promise I'd come back. And I always keep my promises. Come on, I did promise you some candy apples for listening." Eri stared at him with wonder as her red eyes looked up at him. He turned and began to walk with the booth with her on his heel once more, but this time a small smile was on her face as she stared at the floor. Maybe, just maybe he was different. Narrator Pav. Izuku stared intently at his wall with several documents and photos attached with pushpins and red string. Yes, I know, very cliché. On the photos and documents were the origins and pasts of all the League of Villains. He had been looking into them for several months at this point, and now he could confidently say he knew everything about them. Some of them had tried to hide it like Dabi and Shigi, while others held no shame like Toga. He knew each one of them had their reasons, some better than others. Yet, he still couldn't help but feel hate and disdain for them. They used their past as an excuse to cause so much harm. "Izuku, my past was worse than some of theirs, but yet I never once thought of becoming a villain. So, what makes us so different?" That's the question that has been haunting Izuku ever since Kyoto. What was the difference between a hero and a villain? What causes them to appear and who causes which one to come into existence? A heavy sigh escaped the young man as he put his head in his hands while leaning back in his chair. Was it easier to just kill them? Can any of them even be redeemed? His thoughts went to the night before when he was ordered to kill a corrupt hero, a pedophile. Before he would hesitate and downright refuse, but lately he does it without hesitation. Was he truly any better than a villain? Knock knock. Izuku jumped up from his chair and quickly pulled a panel, making the board disappear as the door opened. Ochako poked her head in with obvious makeup on her. "Ochako, are you ready? The reservation is in 20 minutes. Izuku. "Yeah, I'm ready. I was waiting for you, for like 50 minutes. Izuku walked out the door and gave the panel one final look before closing the door behind him. He can ponder over it another day. The lights were bright, thought Izuku as he made his way down a red carpet. It was time for the hero rankings, and Izuku honestly didn't want to be here. He already knew he was going to get ranked, which he believed he didn't deserve. Yet, once again he was threatened, so here he was. He smiled and waved as he weaved through the red carpet until finally making it to the foyer, where he immediately went into a corner to hide. He leaned against a pillar and sighed as he messed with the gauntlets on his costume. It'll just be a few hours and then he'll be gone, back to Momo's thighs and Ochako's arms. While he was lost in thought, someone walked into his side and brought him close into a side hug. He froze as he felt something squish against his arm. "Maruko. Well, look who it is. The man that got into Yukyu's pants and was able to avoid me of all people for so long. Do you remember, Izuku?" Izuku shivered under the red eyes that shamelessly scanned over him. "Izuku. Yeah, I remember, running away from you and Ryuko. My instincts told me to run from the two of you or I might die an unfortunate death." Maruko. "Ha, your instincts were definitely right, but some poor fools would think that's a fortunate death." Izuku. "Denki definitely would." Maruko. "Before I just had a teeny interest in you, but now you might get ranked and now I want a piece of that. How about Friday?" Izuku. "Oh no." Maruko. "Oh yes. After Izuku was harassed and strong-armed into a date, the time for the hero rankings came. He sighed as he got ready along with the other nominations. He always thought these rankings were a joke. Even when he was young, it didn't prove anything except who was the more popular hero. Hell, he was pretty certain he could easily beat all these guys with minimal effort, and by that logic, he should be number one. What a joke. Announcer. For the top 10 of our heroes to start this event at 10 is this up-and-comer who came onto the scene as something frowned upon by this society, a vigilante. After his arrest and his rehabilitation, he quickly made his presence in the hero world known by being the first person to arrive in Kyoto during the strategy, risking his freedom for the people. He was then pardoned and has become a very popular hero. Give it up, people, for the common people hero, Izuku. Izuku wanted to throw up from the name but instead smiled as he made his way to the stage. The crowd roared when he appeared, making him even sick, but it hit the limit when the announcer handed him the mic to give a speech. He stared at it and then the crowd. Izuku. I'll do my best to not disappoint. Izuku zoned out for the remaining heroes, only coming back to congratulate Ryuko for 9. He refocused when the last one was announced and quickly made his way to the exit, but was stopped by an arm that draped over his shoulder. Hawks. Not so fast, my little Kohai, you're coming along too. Izuku. Huh, Hawks. You are gonna join Endeavor and I for lunch tomorrow. Boss's orders. Hawks whispered the last part, making Izuku sigh but nod along anyway. The next day Endeavor chose a high-class restaurant that overlooked the city. He wasn't even listening to the two heroes blabbing about philosophy. He already knew it was Hawks trying to hint at where the LOV was, but you know, good ol' espionage. Danger Sense screamed at Izuku, making him wrap himself in black whip like a cocoon as a Nomu tore into the restaurant, tackling Endeavor out of the building. Nomu. Who's the strongest? To be continued. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Now we will see you in the next video.